Welcome viewers to this live virtual town hall coming to you live from the studios of Tobago Channel 5. I want to let you know as well, we're also live on Facebook. You're going to be able to join us via Zoom. The link will also be posted, so we invite you to check us out, and you will also have the opportunity to call in other words, to be able to interact. This virtual town hall comes to you at a time where we're giving you, the public, an opportunity to interact with all our candidates here, taking part in this election for both the Tobago East and the Tobago West candidates that have presented themselves. This evening, we start off on we're in day one of our 3-day series where we get an opportunity to interact with all the candidates, and we start off with 3 of those candidates this evening: Tasha Boris, Ricardo Philip, and Ayana Webster Roy. I am Julian Skeet, your host for this evening, and I'm joined by my other moderator.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Latoya Roberts.
All right, so just to give us a sense, Latoya, in terms of what kind of format are we working with to make our viewers aware for this evening's town hall meeting?
Well, this evening, the town hall meeting is really a discussion, public conversations. So it's about the candidates having the opportunity to listen to what the people want and also hear their questions and their views, and then hopefully we get good answers on why these candidates are suitable. So this activity was brought about through civil society engagement. We often know that civil society are people in the community who fight for cause, have different issues that they want to be aired. And this program is specifically brought together by Tobago Channel 5 being our media partner, and organizers such as Tobago Writers Guild, Youth Voice TT, Tobago Entrepreneurs, Tobago Literacy Support Unit, and it is also endorsed by 7 other civil societies on the island. So we do have civil society organizations in Tobago, such as the Tobago Youth Council, which I am the president of, Environment Tobago, Environmental Research Institute of Charlottesville, known as ERIC, Tobago Jet Ski Association, which has been recently formed on the island. We also have the Tobago Agriculture Society, Castara Tourism Development Association, and the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association. So all these civil societies have come together as partners towards conversations with the candidates. Julian.
All right. So at this point, viewers, we want to remind you this is the time where those of you on your device, it's important to share the information. We are coming to you here live on Tobago Channel 5 for those of you who are sitting and viewing at home. We're also live on the Facebook page for Tobago Channel 5. You can check us out as well on YouTube. And further to that, as I indicated to you, we are also coming to you live via Pulse 89.5 FM. So you are to call your friends, family, get the information out there for persons to tune in. And if all those mediums are not working at all, you can't get onto Facebook, you can't connect to YouTube, there's also Zoom. So the link will be made available so that you can also connect to be able to hear from our candidates this evening. So just to give you an idea of the format for the town hall meeting, the first 15 minutes or so will be dealing with some general questions to each of the respective candidates, an opportunity to introduce themselves and to speak to the Tobago population. Then we go into a 30-minute segment, 30 to 35 minutes, where we give you an opportunity as the public to be able to engage, because as we said, this is our virtual town hall meeting where you will be able to pose your questions. Note carefully during that 35-minute segment, you can post questions directly to our Tobago Channel 5 Facebook page. You can also post questions for those of you joining us via Zoom. You can post questions in the chat area. Similarly, we'll also put up the phone numbers so that you will know where you can call to pose your questions as well within that segment, so that we have all the information available. I want to say up front, we may not be able to ask all your questions, but we've structured it in such a way that we have asked our candidates to be mindful of the time frame with regards to the responses, and therefore as a result, we keep it as focused as possible so that we can get in as many topics as possible this evening to ensure that you have the information that's available to you, coming to you from all our candidates here as we have these conversations with the candidates. All right, so Toya, let's go immediately into our day one, our very first for this virtual town hall meeting, conversations with the candidate. It gives us great pleasure to welcome on set here with us this evening the PDP candidate for Tobago West, Tasha Boris.
Hi. Good evening, and good evening to all the viewers who are locked on their TVs, listening on radio, or online on Facebook, and are going to join us shortly by Zoom. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for being first. Yes. Let's see if we can set the bar high. Certainly, this is an activity that I'm happy to be a part of, and I can't wait for the rest of the evening.
Excellent. So we start off with something that should be right up your alley and in your comfort zone. Introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about Tasha Burris involved in politics.
My name is Tashia Grace Burris. So my involvement in politics really started from birth. I was born into a family that has always been in politics of some kind. My father and my grandfather were my first teachers when it came to having a voice and advocating. My father would always have the TV on. He would insist that we read the newspaper. My grandfather would be the one to encourage me to read. So I always had that thirst for knowledge, and that came from my father and my grandfather. Growing up, I went to Bishop's High School, so I was a member of the Young Leaders. That was my first real taste in terms of youth leadership. And after I left school, I joined the Tobago Youth Council, and I became a youth advocate. So I volunteered with a number of organizations. I enjoyed working with young people. I worked with the Department of Youth Affairs, so that is where my passion for young people came out. I was able to have some success in the communities that I was in charge of, and that passion for young persons and working with people in communities continued. Let's fast forward to October last year. Farley Chavez Augustine is a good friend of mine from Bishop's High School, and we were also colleagues at the Tobago Youth Council. I felt that we were at a crossroads in Tobago in terms of our development, and we needed the kind of leadership that would progress the island in a positive way. I felt that Farley was the best man to do that job. I decided to lend my support to him, so I joined the party with the intention of supporting him in his bid to become the next Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly. However, politics came knocking on my door as a result, I was asked, and I went through the process of being screened, and I was ultimately selected as the candidate for Tobago West to represent the PDP, and I'm here, and I'm proud to be the candidate to represent Tobago West, and I think that there's a lot that we can get done. The PDP is a new party, but it's a youth-centered and youth-centric party. Most of the leadership positions in the party are held by young persons, and I think that that is a good avenue for us to start to pass that baton in terms of having young persons take up those positions in society.
All right.
Great. So, you mentioned a lot of positivity coming from you. And a lot of the time, people think that, being a representative or a politician it's all good. There's the joys of it. But for you being a candidate going towards this election, tell us some of your fears or challenges that you have been going through so far in the process.
Well, to be honest with you, fear is almost an alien feeling to me, because I pray a lot. I have steadfast faith that anything that God leads me to is something that He will bring me through, regardless of how difficult it might be. I think what has been difficult for me is actually transitioning from being a very private person to being a now more public figure, and the things that come with that. There's a lot of good. What puts a smile on my face, especially seeing little children recognize me from the billboards. They want to take pictures, they want to sing the PDP songs, they want to dance, and people coming up to me and saying that I've been an inspiration to them, that they listen to me on the platforms. It gives them hope when they hear me speak, that they are sure that if I am elected, that I will do an excellent job. The downside, I think, of living in the public limelight is, I think, the bullying that takes place. Social media has now given a platform to any and everybody to jump on the attack, and some of it kind of crosses the line. So if you're not a very strong person mentally and spiritually, that kind of thing will get you down. I'm steadfast in my faith that what I'm in now is what God has purposed me to do in this life at this time. So regardless of what is taking place in the atmosphere, I remain positive. I remain with my eyes firmly fixed on the challenge and the mission ahead of me, which is, regardless of the outcome of the election, is to continue to be an asset to the people of Tobago and continue to drive and help drive development on the island.
So you're vying for the seat for Tobago West. Give us a sense of where do you envision Tobago West within the next 5 years, if chosen to be the representative. Yes. In other words, tell us about your vision for Tobago.
I want to see an entire transformation of the Tobago space. I think that for the last 20 years or so, and let me be fair, we had a particular administration in the THA within the first 20 years. So that was from 1980 when it started to about 2000. You had one party essentially being in power, and they would have had plans and visions for the island. Then another party went in around 20 years ago. And I think new parties, when they're out the blocks, they want to prove themselves. So I have to give credit that in those first 4 years, they may have been doing some good things for the island. But for the last 10 years or so, I think the island has fallen into a state of stagnancy and stasis when it comes to development. When I walk around the communities and I talk to young people are not seeing the opportunities that are necessary for them to grow. So one of the things that I would like to see, and it's part of the PDP mandate, is that involvement, that community involvement, and devolving some of the powers of the Tobago House of Assembly into the community. So something like elevating our village councils to community councils, giving them a budget to work with, so that each electoral district, each community in Tobago, we can start to monetize their strengths. So let's take Buku for example. Buku is the classic tourist town. I always keep talking about Buku, the fact that there's so much potential there with the right kind of investment and the right kind of leadership. So I would want to see towns like Buku improve in such a way that they can now contribute to the revenue generating potential of the island, whether it be at the level of tourism, whether it be at the level of agriculture, whether it be at the level of sports, education, holistic medical tourism, whatever you think about. Tobago has so many natural resources that are available to us, and as a result I think we need to put some more emphasis on monetizing those natural resources. So certainly in terms of Tobago West, I would like to have the focus in terms of our tourism product, a more focused tourism product. We need to make the relevant investments in marketing, right? Some of that needs to go into, because now there's a new normal, it's post-COVID. It means that the world is now, in terms of tourism, we now have to think about how we're going to innovate our tourism product in order to be able to compete with the rest of the islands. So we have to look at things like educational tourism in a real way. We have to look at things like encouraging digital nomads, those persons who work remotely. So you might be a citizen of the United States, but you're working remotely in Tobago. We can provide sun, sea, sun, and very good Wi-Fi, and at any place in the world you can be in Tobago and work, and encourage persons to bring their families and set down roots. We have to look at the Foreign Investment Act and how these things have worked against us in the past, and how we can maybe make some changes now to encourage more persons who live outside, whether they be foreigners or nationals who have made their homes in the diaspora and outside, to come back home and invest in home, whether it be to come and live here physically or to maintain homes, say, to make sure that they come home at least once per year, to set up roots, to have those linkages being formed with ourselves and the persons outside who love their island and who want to come back to contribute. I see once we make certain investments with respect to tourism especially, I want to see a transformed Scarborough. I go to St. Martin and I look at the waterfront and I see how much potential we have for that Wilson Road, that Milford Road, waterfront there. And the potential is there for Tobago to be one of the leading destinations in the Caribbean. So we need the capital investment to do that, and that is why the role of the MP is so important, settling the autonomy issue, and as well as ensuring that we get a larger share of the national budget to be able to make those capital investments in these projects.
All right. Tell me, how do you see in this scenario, given that it is clear that the PDP is a Tobago-based party, and if selected, how do you see the PDP as two candidates? You know, let's say you're selected to go forward.
Right.
The two persons representing Tobago, East and West, taking it to the Parliament to ensure, that's as you mentioned, that the self-governance bill is something that comes into focus once again.
Right, so for those persons who don't know the history or who haven't been listening to us on the platforms, the reason why the Tobago House of Assembly is in existence for today is because of two independent seats in Parliament. That was in the form of Mr. A.N.R. Robinson and Dr. Winston Murray. They were able to stand alone in Parliament and put forward a motion and have the motion seconded for that Tobago House of Assembly bill to be debated and passed. They had to appeal to, at the time I think we had 36 seats in Parliament, so they had to appeal to 34 other politicians or 34 other parliamentarians to be able to get them on board with supporting Tobago's vision at that time for its own growth and development. And they were successful in doing so, putting forward that case, arguing that case, and having 34 politicians get on board. Some of them, all of them did not agree, but enough persons agreed to have that bill passed and have the Tobago House of Assembly come into fruition. And that is how the Assembly was formed in 1980. We are in 2020, and significant revisions to that arrangement have not been made since 1996, which was THA Act 1996. The two things that are largely outstanding, and that is what the bill should be addressing, is one, Tobago's ability to be able to make laws in its own space. A regional corporation under the Constitution can pass a law and have the president immediately assent to it. In Tobago, we have to go through a long, convoluted process to have laws passed in our space. So it seems like if the motions that we even put forward in the House are of no consequence, because even to get that to go through the process to have some of these motions read into law, we have to go to Parliament in Trinidad. It has to go to Cabinet. They have to agree, and Cabinet is whoever the ruling government is, whether it be PNM, UNC, or anybody else. They have to agree. Then a bill has to be created. The bill has to be debated in the both houses. They have to be passed in the both houses. Then the president would come in. And for Tobago people, we are living on a standalone island. We are a country in our own right. This is the process we have to go through to make laws in our own space. We're saying that in 2020 that should not be. The second thing that needs to occur is the fact that we do not currently have our own executive authority and powers, which means that any decisions that the Tobago House of Assembly has to make outside of those fifth schedule items has to go to a cabinet in Trinidad for their approval. My thing is that Tobago has some of the most brilliant minds in the country, in the Caribbean, in the world. So is it that a government is telling me that the people of Tobago are not bright enough, mature enough, intelligent enough to make decisions on their own and make decisions for the people of this island that would be in their best interest? I don't want to believe that that is the argument that is being advanced. So in 2020, I want to see a Tobago that has all its attendant rights and powers to be able to take its place side by side in this unitary relationship, Trinidad and Tobago.
All right, good.
Great. This is a bit of a contentious question, but there are rumors or assumptions that, PDP contesting the only 2 seats in Tobago, and whether there's a possibility that the parties affiliated with the UNC or any other political parties in Trinidad, since there are no other seats being contested. How do you respond to that?
Well, my response to that is this. I have heard the ruling PNM say that they win alone and they lose alone. So that any idea of the 2 Tobago seats going to the PDP and a coalition taking place even with them is already off the table. They have said that as a party, if they have no voice, that's what they're saying. This is my logical argument here, that if they lose the 2 Tobago seats, that they are not under the PNM, that they're not willing to entertain any other voice coming out of Tobago. So if that door is already shut on that side, and let's say the UNC wins the majority of the seats in Trinidad, the PDP still has to work with whoever forms the government, whether it be a United National Congress government or whether it be a People's National Movement government. The reality is this. Tobago for far too long has been used by these 2 parties as a political puppet. And it comes around every election season. They only understand how important these 2 seats are when they want them to form a government. What we are saying is this. Tobago people, the people of Tobago, deserve more than just to be remembered around election time. We sing our national anthem lustily, just as anybody down the road, and we sing that line side by side we stand. But we only stand side by side when Tobago doesn't appear to go the way of whoever is in the ruling government. My thing is that has to stop. The people of Tobago deserve a voice regardless. So we are advocating for the redefining of that relationship. The relationship has to be renegotiated at this point so that Tobago gets the equality it deserves regardless of who wins the election in Trinidad. It should not matter who gets the majority of seats at parliament level in Trinidad. Tobago should be guaranteed a voice, and we have not been getting that guarantee of a voice. When Tobago is under the PNM control, and we saw that in the last administration, the 2 Tobago MPs have to be subjected to a leader of government business in terms of getting up to speak. And they were not in their own capacity able to bring that bill to Parliament. They had to go according to the agenda of the government. If the government's agenda did not include autonomy for Tobago, those 2 MPs could not stand up and say, let us bring this bill to Parliament at the risk of their own jobs. A similar arrangement may happen with another person in power. power. We are saying that regardless of what happens down there, it's 39 versus 2. And it shouldn't be 39 versus 2. It should actually be 2 equals 39.
Interesting point of view there.
Very interesting perspective. So, Tashia, you are running particularly for Tobago West, where there is apparently what seems to be now the issue that would have arisen in recent times regarding the airport relocation project, and particularly concerns regarding the level of transparency and whether or not it is really beneficial to the people affected in the area. How would you, as MP, if selected, how do you think you can assist in terms of making some kind of change or moving forward progressively with the project?
I'm glad.
How would you approach that project?
I'm happy that you mentioned that, because the peace movement that is leading that charge in that particular area, which is an organization made up of the residents who would be directly affected by the project, they have always asked for just fair and equitable compensation for their lands and their properties. I mean, and we would have examples of persons' lands being acquired in Trinidad for their airport project. An entire new community was built to relocate these residents. You are not hearing these things being done for these persons. They are being asked to take money, and out of that money, rent in the meantime while their homes are being constructed. If somebody sells 10 acres to the government, even if land is being offered, they are not going to be given back 10 acres. They might be given a lot or two. The reality is that the process is what they have an issue with, and the process is what I have an issue with, for 2 reasons. One, we have to ensure that our people get fair and just compensation for their properties. Whether they live in Tobago, in Crown Point, whether they live in Charlottesville, whether they live in Plymouth, it does not matter. I would want to see a caring government that will communicate with persons, that would leave all channels open, that will leave no stone unturned to ensure these residents feel safe and secure in knowing that their government is working for them. The second reason why I have personal issues with the project is the fact that there has been a lack of transparency as to what the project entails. We have seen a contract being signed for 1.2 billion. We have heard that the existing terminal will be upgraded and a new terminal will be built, but nobody has come to tell us these are the plans. This is what is going to be done on that land. This is what you can expect. You can expect 100,000 square feet of duty-free shopping. We're going to build an airport hotel. We're going to extend the runway by X amount of meters. We're going to build hangar facilities so larger jets can come and overnight in Tobago. We want to hear those things because those have implications for business in Tobago, especially in that area. Have we consulted with the businessmen in Crown Point to ensure that they get first preference in terms of persons who occupy business spaces in the new airport? How are we protecting our people? We are bringing in, and this is just me looking on, I'm seeing something that resembles container housing being constructed in that area for workers. And if that is the case, and we're bringing in foreign labor, how is it that we ensure that our local laborers, that we're making the quota in terms of ensuring that our local laborers are given fair chance to get jobs as part of these projects? All of these things are serious concerns to me in terms of my own representation of my people, because I want to make sure that if so much money, taxpayers' money, is being spent on a project that size, that Tobago has to see benefits up front, in the middle, and towards the end. No one has presented to us a cost-benefit analysis of the project. For us as Tobagoans to scrutinize the process and really ask ourselves, is this something that we want to do right now? There are other areas that somebody can argue are of more priority at this time, especially in light of the fact that our borders are closed and we're dealing with a possible second wave of COVID. We do not know what the length and breadth of that would look like. So it means, in essence, that an international airport being built at this time may not be a priority item for the people of Tobago, but other areas may be, but we should be the ones to be able to say so.
All right, as you spoke to the issue in relation to, I want to delve right now straight from airport into the issue of land titles, which is another big concern within the context of the Tobago space. How do you see yourself, if selected, using your goodly office in order to effect some kind of change or to address the current issue regarding land titles in Tobago?
You see, all of these issues that you're bringing up, all of them come back to the fact that Tobago does not have its full autonomy. Because the fact that people are unable to buy and sell land in Tobago unless somebody dictates that in Trinidad, that somebody in Trinidad can sit in tongue and country planning and say that that land in that area is agricultural land, but a residential area exists there because people have built their homes over time, they pay their money out of pocket, they don't go to the bank, and a community has sprung up. It may have been agricultural land back in 1976, but it's now a community with homes and businesses, and that change of use has not been done because tongue and country planning is no longer under the purview of the Tobago House of Assembly, but it's in a ministry under a minister in Trinidad, and that minister probably never set foot in the place that the person is trying to get the change of use from. And all of these agencies, not just with respect to land titles, we're talking about pensions. Persons who are public servants still have to send their documents to Trinidad to get their pensions seen about. It happens in our medical system, where we still have persons who have to access medical care, urgent medical care in Trinidad. Tobago has to address the fact, and I want people to understand that this election is not necessarily about a political party. It is about Tobago's getting its self-determination and its right to be able to choose, its right to be able to organize its own business. And one of those contentious issues is that land title issue. We have the Foreign Investment Act, which right now is not very foreigner friendly. It's not very foreign direct investment friendly. So that if it is that we have to have a revision in that act to encourage persons outside to be able to come in the island and invest their money and cut out some of the red tape that currently exists, Tobago has to be able to say with certainty, this is what we want. We have the systems in place set up to do so, and we will ensure that it's done in a particular way to protect our patrimony and protect our people. So that using my office as MP largely would be to settle that autonomy issue so that the Tobago House of Assembly can do its work. The MP is really the THA's representative in Parliament, because the highest office on this land, which is the office of the Chief Secretary, he does not have a voice in Parliament. He can't stand in Parliament and advocate for Tobagonians. He doesn't have a day set aside once every quarter to speak in the Parliament, speak to the population of Trinidad and Tobago about Tobago issues. The only persons who have that voice are the two members of Parliament. And using that platform, we need to pave the way for the THA to be able to do its work.
So it's interesting that you would make that analogy with regards to the Chief Secretary not having. So therefore, I'm very interested to see, how do you see it working if the two MPs belong to one party and the THA is ruled by another party? How do you see it working in the best case specifically for the benefit of Tobago?
Ideally, I want to make an immediate plug for my colleague, Mr. Farley Chavez Augustine. We would want that on August 10th, that the people of Tobago would choose the Progressive Democratic Patriots to represent them in Parliament. And once the THA election is called, when it's constitutionally due in January 2021, we hope that they would make that second choice and give Mr. Augustine and his team the opportunity to be at that level in the Tobago House of Assembly. But as I said, even if that does not happen,
well, let's deal with a few months in between. So between August and December, how do we see it working given the circumstances as best as possible? The thing about it
is there is a parliamentary agenda, obviously, so that when the election is done and the dust has settled and a government is installed, then discussions have to be had, because we do not know what the composition of that government may look like. One party may win the government outright, or there may be a coalition, there may have to be, we really don't know. So that when we get to that bridge, we'll have to cross it. But the top of our agenda is that autonomy issue. It is, for far too long, we've allowed that situation to fester. And I think that once the Tobagonians have voted us in, that is the mandate that they are giving us, that the first order of business is to settle that autonomy issue. The first order of business is to renegotiate that budgetary allocation that comes to Tobago on a yearly basis. So that regardless of who the Tobago people choose as their leaders at the level of the Tobago House of Assembly, we want Tobago to benefit, and Tobago should start to benefit from its presence in this unitary relationship between Trinidad and Tobago. And that, again, as I say, is not a party issue. That is a Tobago issue. And all Tobagonians should be on board with the idea that Tobago should be able to be man and woman in their own house.
Interesting point. I think I just have one more question for you at this time. We're talking about the current context of employment in Tobago, where approximately 70% of the persons are employed with THA, and there's really a smaller dwindling private sector on the island. If selected as the MP for Tobago West, what are your plans or ideas as it relates to employment on the island of Tobago?
Okay, so My thought, again, and I will put it out there, the MP is really the representative of the THA in Parliament. So the relationship between the elected member of Parliament and the members who are representing the electoral districts that make up the constituency has to be a very, very close relationship. Because when we're talking about community development should not just be community centers, lights on playing fields and training programs, but it really should be how are we creating business centers and how are we driving economy within these electoral districts. So that Canaan-Bonaccord, for example, is one of the electoral districts that has a large number of tourism-based businesses and enterprises. How are we getting together as the MP, the representative, and the stakeholders within that community to craft a development plan and a vision for Canaan-Bonaccord? Because you can have an overall vision for the island, but what we're looking at is really decentralizing a lot of the power away from the THA and into the hands of people in communities. And that is the idea that we have in terms of creating an all-inclusive democratic model where the average person does not feel disconnected from their representatives. The average person has a say more than just voting on election day, but they can actually be part of a team or part of a group of people who are submitting plans for their community, their street, their residents, their constituency that would add to the positive development of that space. So that in terms of employment for young people, one of the visions we have in the mandate is to create these economic centers within these electoral districts that are focused in main industry areas such as agriculture, fishing, tourism, educational tourism, medical, sports, you name it, what innovation and technology, anything that we can do, that we can invest in communities that is going to create jobs and make money for the island and make money for the persons living in the communities. These are the things that we have to look towards, because we actually want to move Tobago from a state of dependency to a state of financial independence. It means that our people, the lives of our people, have to be improved exponentially. Young persons are only being offered minimum wage jobs, and they're only being offered temporary make-work programs. You have a number of young persons who are complaining that they got themselves qualified, and when they apply for positions, they're being told that they are overqualified. So it means that we have to create centers of employment that have no involvement directly with the Tobago House of Assembly, that persons, we can boost our private sector and we can create our alternative industries that will have these sustainable jobs, that our young people can make a decent living wage to be able to take care of themselves and their families. And that is my vision for employment, that young people will be leading that charge in the communities.
Excellent. Viewers, you are live here with us on Tobago Channel 5, and you are viewing public conversations with our candidates. We are currently in conversation with Tashia Burris, PDP candidate for Tobago West. And when we return from the break, we really want to encourage you to, of course, this is your opportunity to ask your questions, to join the conversation. Feel free to contribute your questions via Zoom. We also encourage you to go directly to our Facebook page, Tobago Channel 5, to put your questions forward to us. Additionally, you have the option of calling in order to ask your questions as we go forward. We go to a break. We'll be right back.
In these unsure financial times, protection of your hard-earned financial assets is a priority. We at MI4 Security Cash in Transit Service are sure to grant you peace of mind. Fully insured services. Call us today at 660-7723 or 635-2144. MI4 Security Services Company Limited, keeping Tobago safe.
For the perfect decor to accentuate your home, Lynn's Variety Store has it all. From bedroom and bath sets, dinner sets, household accessories and appliances, even ladies' accessories and brown school shoes. Located at Tino's Mall, Wilson Road, Scarborough, 686-7879.
Renting a vehicle? Come to Save-A-Lot. We have a wide variety of fuel-efficient cars and SUVs at the most affordable prices. Save-A-Lot has been providing Trinidad and Tobago with reliable rentals to meet a variety of transportation needs. From one-day rentals to short-term leasing, let Save-A-Lot get you behind the wheel of a vehicle quickly and affordably, saving you time and money.
Visit the new and improved Belfonds Hardware Limited, number 17 Canby, Mount Pleasant. Spacious showroom for your convenience. All hardware items including blocks, steel, paint, toilet sets, power tools, lumber, and everything plumbing and electrical. Open Sunday to Friday. 631-0911.
We are coming to you live from the studios of Tobago Channel 5. This is Conversations with the Candidate, or virtual town hall meeting. The phone lines are open at the moment. You can contact us at 635-1005 and 635-1412. We also invite you as well. You can connect with us via Tobago Channel 5. So on Facebook, it's Tobago Channel 5. I see we have a number of comments here coming in on Tobago Channel 5, and we want to remind you that we will be identifying. You can ask your questions there on the platform as well. I realize thus far we have as much as 190 something comments coming in. So we will try to, of course, select as best as we could the questions so that we can put forward to the candidate as well, so that we can have the questions answered. So viewers, are reminding you 635-1005 and 635-1412 to make contact with us while we're in this interview. So at this point, I see you. Yes, I think we have a first question coming in. All right. How does the PDP expect to settle that autonomy agenda, considering that the PDP is vying for only 2 out of 41 seats in the parliament, where the majority vote is needed in favor of any proposition to move things forward, to pass? I think that's what I'm seeing as the question there. Yes?
Well, 2 seats, one person can move a motion and the other one would second a motion. The idea is that the bill already exists in some form or fashion. I mean, the people of Tobago do not know what version of the bill exists because it was before a joint select committee for the last 2 years, and I would expect that certain sections of that bill may have been changed or amended, or certain things may have been taken out. I think what needs to happen before anything happens is we need to know what version of the bill is under consideration. The people of Tobago need to know what are the contents of that bill and what are the implications for Tobago. Once the people of Tobago are satisfied that the bill, in whatever form it is, represents what we want for our island, then it would be our responsibility to raise a motion to have the bill brought to Parliament and debated. That out of the 2 of us, one would raise the motion, someone would second it, and that is how the bill would be debated. At that point in time, and going back to history, for those of you who do not know how it was achieved in the first instance, it was 2 independent Tobago seats sitting in Parliament in the form of Mr. A.N.R. Robinson and Dr. Winston Murray, who got that first self-autonomy bill for Tobago passed in 1976. Somebody raised a motion, the motion was seconded, the bill was brought to Parliament for debate. What I'm saying is this: 39 parliamentarians who sit in Trinidad and represent their constituencies across that island, Arima, Mayaro, Moruga, San Fernando, Port of Spain. Each of those parliamentarians in their role want what is best for their constituency. Whether it be they work with regional corporations, they are towns, they want development to come, they want roads fixed, they want hospitals built, they want schools, they want highways, they want roads, and they will advocate for those things to happen. And the development agenda is one such that Trinidad will get it at some point in time, whether that seat is opposition or it's in government. Tobago is a different instance. We are not given that same level of importance as 39 constituencies in Trinidad. What we're asking Tobagonians to do, understand and agree with, is the fact that the 2 Tobago seats are 2 persons representing the country island of Tobago within a unitary relationship. We are asking for the renegotiation of the terms and conditions of that relationship, which includes us being able to have the powers to make our own decisions. We have to appeal to the sensibilities of 39 parliamentarians to get on board with the idea that in 2020, Tobago is ready. Tobago is ready to become self-actualized. Tobago is ready to reach its highest potential, because the same thing we want for ourselves as those representatives, they would want for Arima, they would want for South, they would want for East. And if that is the case, and they can stand up in Parliament and tell us why they don't want us to get our autonomy, then it means then therefore we have to look at our place in this relationship. If 39 parliamentarians are saying to the people of Tobago, you don't deserve those powers and you're not ready for it.
Okay, great. So we have a question as it relates to, is it a priority for you to advocate for separation of powers if elected?
A separation of powers. I think I need a little bit more information as to what that person is referring to, because a couple of things come to mind. I don't want to answer, and it has nothing to do with what they're asking. But if it's separation of powers with respect to the legislative, the executive, the judiciary, that already exists. So I would want them to be a little bit more specific in terms of what they're asking. The Constitution is set out in such a way that already exists. There may be some loopholes, there may be some gray areas in places, but if they could specify what they're talking about, then
understood. I think for clarity, definitely need to be posed. We have another question coming in from Hannah Rose Alfred. Her question to you is, how will you ensure transparency in the management of finances if PDP was given the opportunity to govern Tobago?
Right. So we have an accountability issue that exists currently in the Tobago House of Assembly. The PNM-led Tobago House of Assembly has almost become an untouchable entity, and no government, whether it be their own party or another party, has been able to really arrest the situation that is taking place. And that has come from the fact that the relationship has been what it has been. On one hand, it has been disadvantageous in such a way in terms of there being an idea out there that Tobago is a burden on the Treasury, that we come cap in hand every year asking for a check. But then when we get the check, we are telling them stay out of Tobago people business. So it's like a double-edged sword. And because of that, governments have been very wary to have the Tobago House of Assembly account in the way that it should. Yes, we've had a number of Auditor General reports that could not be qualified because of many different situations. What we intend to do actually, and this is a suggestion that has come from one of our membership, is that we institute an office of the public defender, which is really an auditing function that would exist to provide that independent oversight to the operations of the Tobago House of Assembly. Certainly an assembly led by Mr. Augustine and his team from the PDP what is accountability would be one of their most critical issues that they have to address, because we want to be able to ensure that the monies that we are getting from central government, that we can be held to account when that money is spent on behalf of taxpayers, and we are not afraid to be held to account. They are the Office of the Auditor General that currently exists. Also within the Ministry of Finance, there are auditing functions that are there. But as I said, because of the politics of the situation, those organizations may not have been given the teeth, or they don't have the robustness to act when it comes to the THA. We have no problem subjecting ourselves to being held accountable by the people of Tobago, and by extension the people of Trinidad and Tobago, because after all, we are receiving taxpayers' funds.
All right. Okay. So we just want to remind our viewers again, if you're sending your questions, and we know that a number of persons would have shared the link as well, you've got to go directly to the Tobago Channel 5 link, and of course ask your question immediately under the live that's taking place on Tobago Channel 5. So we just want to remind you of that, and you can also call in via 635-1005. Question for you again, Ms. Boris. If Ms. Boris is elected, how will she ensure that the day-to-day problems of her constituency, such as infrastructure, water, electricity, roads, schools, community centers, etc., are constantly supported and improved to ensure the people's needs are met?
And this comes from a very, very close working relationship with the persons who are the representatives, the area representatives of the electoral districts, and a close working relationship between the members of Parliament and the Tobago House of Assembly. In other words, we ask for the money, and they are the ones that spend it on our behalf. So our work would be largely to ensure that that money is being spent in an equitable fashion. So it means that we have to do our needs assessment. We have to see where our communities are at present. And when we assess the state of our communities, and we have that list of critical needs, whether it be roads, whether it be water, electricity. Now, mind you, water and electricity, all of these things are outside of the responsibility of the Tobago House of Assembly. And everything comes back to that autonomy issue, because Tobago must be able to, in its space, make decisions on behalf of Tobago. So, for example, TNTech is probably having an issue. We are getting power outages more often these days than previously used to happen. As of yet, I am yet to hear as a constituent why this is the situation. Nobody in TNTech answers to the Chief Secretary. So that the people of Tobago, we are experiencing power outages, our appliances are being damaged, we have to send requests for compensation to an office in Trinidad, to somebody in Trinidad, but nobody can explain to the people of Tobago why we have that issue. And it tells me that there is some disconnect between the Member of Parliament, who is supposed to find out from TNTech, we've been having outages in this area religiously for the past 6 months. Can you give me an explanation so that I can go back to my constituents and let them know what the problem is? Or even the office of the Chief Secretary, because he's the highest office in the land, he must be able to call a minister in Trinidad who's responsible for TNTech and say, look, the constituents of Tobago, East and West, that totals X amount of customers of the national of TNTech, they are experiencing drops in service, disruption in service, and the standard of the service has dropped over the last couple of weeks. Can you tell us what is the issue so that we can communicate this to people so that people will know something? There's a deafening silence, and this is just one thing among many. So that we have to really establish that relationship between the Member of Parliament, the area representative at the level of the electoral district, and the Tobago House of Assembly as the executing body, to ensure that those the resources of the state are equitably distributed across the island of Tobago.
All right, so Tashia, somebody just indicated we're seeing one of these questions coming in.
So quickly.
Yes, very quickly. Tashia, I heard you used the term medical tourism, and that was when we were in the first half of the program. Could you briefly expand on that term and how you hope to achieve, that same kind of progress? Further, could you show how this medical tourism could complement or improve our current medical environment in the Tobago space?
Right. So some of these things that I mentioned are really long-term plans. It's not going to happen next week, next year, or within the next 5 years. But the idea is that, and I always advocate that we need to fix home first, so that even with respect to our traditional tourism product, we still have issues with people being able to access water on a regular supply. So that if it is our residents who live here are having issue with road infrastructure, water, electricity, these basic items that are needed for day-to-day survival, how do we expect to get our house ready for visitors? How do we expect to welcome people into our space when our own people are not at a level where everybody is comfortable and everybody is living the best life that they can on the island? So that for me, we have to address our healthcare in Tobago. Our healthcare is not at the level that I am comfortable at. I think a lot of Tobagonians would echo that sentiment, that there are still a number of persons who have to seek private medical care in Trinidad because of one reason or another. We have equipment that is still down and waiting for parts. We have suppliers that are being owed millions of dollars. The management of our healthcare system on the island needs an overhaul. So before we invite persons to come and spend their money here, because my dream for that is actually a state-of-the-art medical center, which might be the expansion of our current medical services to allow for persons to come into our island and pay to have certain services performed. One thing that people don't look at is this. You can go to the United States, and I'm just pulling figures out of a hat. If you have to get a root canal procedure done in the United States, it might cost you upwards of, let's say, $3,000 US dollars. That same root canal in Tobago may cost you 3,000 TT dollars. So you understand that you could probably get a very, very well done root canal. You can pay for a ticket to come to Tobago, pay to get your root canal done, leave Tobago and not spend the kind of money that you would spend getting that procedure done in the United States. We see it happen. A lot of American citizens go to places like Mexico to get procedures done. So we're saying that if Tobago could position itself in such a way that because of the fact that that exchange rate is favorable to them, then the price that they pay for procedures to be done in their countries could be far cheaper if they do it here, and if we are able to do it up to the same standard or far better than what they have on offer. So that is where I see the possibility of our medical tourism going, in addition to holistic tourism. So you're talking about our spa services, you're talking about the traditional bush medicine, as people will call it. All of those teas and those leaves and all these things that we grew up drinking. I mean, I can't remember the last time I got a cold. In the absence of COVID, but you know, your granny always have some remedy, or your mother have some remedy. But the reality is that we have so much potential in terms of even that. So all of these things we can look at in terms of monetizing on the island.
Okay, Tasha, the questions are coming in really fast, so we hope that you can answer them to the point and shorter.
Right.
We have this long one coming in from Dion Bukaj. He said, realistically, Tobago cannot survive on its own unless industry is put in place. Without industries, we have to rely on Trinidad until. That is an uphill battle that can last for years. So my question is, how do we find funds to put industries in place in Tobago? The buying of commercial equipment, the development of lands, etc. And he goes on to talk about Tobago having self-government towards this issue.
Right.
So can we raise the funds for the industries that we need?
The second part of what we're going down for is to revise that budgetary allocation. Back in October 2000 was when the Dispute Resolution Commission report was laid in Parliament that set that range, 4.03% to 6.9%. We've never gotten close to 6.9%. Every government, regardless of color, has given us just that minimum or just a little bit more. What we're saying that 20 years later, nobody in Tobago is working on a 2000 salary or a 2001 salary. How do we expect to run a country? Because Tobago has to start to look at itself as a country. They look at Tobago in terms of physical size and population size, and they try to work out what they think might be appropriate as an allocation for Tobago. But Tobago is a country. Tobago has the attendant services of what a country has. We have the equivalent of a prime minister or president in the form of our chief secretary and all his secretaries in their divisions. They have those roles and functions, so that somebody who is accessing services in Arima as part of Trinidad, they don't have the same problems as somebody who is living in Tobago trying to access the same services. So when you talk about capital investment, Tobago now has to have an allocation that is closer to ensuring that we can now become financially independent. The party actually wants to wean itself off of Trinidad, but in order for that to happen, we have to invest in these industries. So that allocation needs to be renegotiated in light of the fact that markets have gone up. The cost of living in Tobago is proportionately higher to Trinidad. So why are we getting essentially the same money 20 years later to be able to run the affairs in Tobago? The bulk of that money goes to recurrent expenditure, which is managing the Tobago House of Assembly, and a very small part of that goes to development. How can we develop ourselves when it's just a drop in the bucket of what we require?
All right, we have Kai Wilson coming to us, and this is a very interesting one. What is your way forward, Tasha, if you get elected to represent Tobago as the MP? These kinds of open-ended questions. But see how you can summarize that for us. What is your way forward if you get elected to represent Tobago as the Member of Parliament?
I'm not certain if we could remember the days when we had MPs that had such a fighting spirit. They were so in love with their island, and they could see far into the future in terms of where the island could get to if we had all the things that we need to get to be able to reach our highest potential. I intend to fight. Whatever that fight looks like, I intend to do. So that I'm not going to Parliament to make friends with anybody. I'm not going in Parliament to be silenced by anybody. I'm speaking on behalf of 60,000 people who reside on 116 square miles, and a possible another 200,000 who reside in Trinidad, and a possible 1 million who reside across the world, who all want to see the island of their birth come into its own. So that whatever has to be done, because the question may arise after we go through the process of putting this motion forward, having the motion debated. Let's say 39 parliamentarians in all their might decide to vote no against this bill. Then we need to have a conversation with the people of Tobago. Is it that we are going to continue to take the disrespect that is being meted out to us because they don't see us as equals, that it's all fancy words, that our national anthem is a lie, that we cannot stand side by side because they don't want us to stand by side? What do you as the people of Tobago want to do what do you want us to do on your behalf? And if the people of Tobago say to us, well, leave it alone, what more can I do other than put forward the will of my people. But if my people want to fight, if my people intend to stand up collectively and say enough is enough, that we want to be man and woman in our own house, let us renegotiate this position. Let us take it to international bodies. Let us talk to CARICOM. Let's talk to the UN. Let's see who can arbitrate in this matter to get Tobago what it has been asking for years. Then that fight is the fight that I am more than willing and able to take up on behalf of my people.
Wow,
right.
powerful.
Just as, and you're going, we trust that you'll continue with this energy,
Yes,
because
yes.
we have come down just wrapping up about an hour. I know it doesn't even seem like an hour.
It doesn't.
But you have an opportunity to give us what are your closing statements to the people of Tobago as you vie as the candidate for Tobago West.
I want to say to the people of Tobago, and specifically the people of Tobago West, it has always been my intention to bring real representation to the people. I love working with people. I want to see my people gain their best selves, become their best selves, become self-actualized in their space. And I think it requires the kind of leadership that goes into the communities, that has the conversations, and sometimes they are painful conversations to have. But when I talk to my young people and I say to them, I do not want to give you a job. I don't want to hear that you want a morning work. You know why? I see you as a businessman. I see you as a professional. I see you owning your own space and using your talents to make your life better. I want to come and spend money in your establishments. These are the kind of conversations I want to have, because I see our youth as being critically important over the next 10 years in pushing that development agenda in Tobago. And we need our young persons on board. We need them excited. We need them vibrant. We need to trust them. We need to respect them. We can no longer make promises to them and break them. We have to show them that we, as the persons vying for these positions, are willing to get into the dirt and work with them. We are willing to pick up the shovels and dig the hole if it needs to be built. And that at the end of the day, after all of the hard work, we can enjoy the victory. So that for me, being young and as strong as I am right now, I want to devote the next 10 years of my life to ensuring that with a committed group of young people next to us, not behind us, but next to us, side by side, holding hands, we can start to build the Tobago we want to live in. That the elders are there to provide their support and advice, their prayers, and we are thankful for that. We are strong enough to protect the young ones coming up who are not yet strong to take up the mantle. There is a lot of work to be done, and that work has to start today. We may not ever see the fruits of our labor. We might just be planting seeds now. The trees may grow, we will die, but the fruit would be there for all generations to eat. But if we don't plant those seeds today, there will be nothing for them to eat if we continue down the road we're going.
Yes, viewers, you are hearing it here. Tashia Grace Boris, PDP candidate for Tobago West, and we are here at the virtual town hall, conversations with the candidates. And at this point, we really want to express our thanks and appreciation just for Tashia for joining us. We know that, of course, the campaign trail keeps all our candidates very busy and taking the time out to ensure you come here to express your views and to ensure that you share your information. Similarly, I think I can say we can look forward over the next 2 days, because this is a 3-day period, to also hearing from your colleague for Tobago East, Mr. Watson Duke, and all the other candidates that are in the lineup for this year's general election 2020 for Tobago East and Tobago West. Once again, we're coming to you live from the studios of Tobago Channel 5. We ask you to stay tuned and connected with us. We go to a break and we'll be right back with our second candidate this evening on day 1 of our virtual town hall meeting, Conversations with the Candidates. We'll be right back.
In these unsure financial times, protection of your hard-earned financial assets is a priority. We at MI4 Security Cash and Transit Service are sure to grant you peace of mind. Fully insured services. Call us today at 660-7723 or 635-2144. MI4 Security Services Company Limited, keeping Tobago safe.
For the perfect decor to accentuate your home, Lynn's Variety Store has it all. From bedroom and bath sets, dinner sets, household accessories and appliances, even ladies' accessories and brown school shoes. Located at Tino's Mall, Wilson Road, Scarborough, 686-7879.
Renting a vehicle? Come to Save-A-Lot. We have a wide variety of fuel-efficient cars and SUVs at the most affordable prices. Save-A-Lot has been providing Trinidad and Tobago with reliable rentals to meet a variety of transportation needs. From one-day rentals to short-term leasing, let Save-A-Lot get you behind the wheel of a vehicle quickly and affordably, saving you time and money.
Visit the new and improved Belfonds Hardware Limited, number 17 Canby, Mount Pleasant. Spacious showroom for your convenience. All hardware items including blocks, steel, paint, toilet sets, power tools, lumber, and everything plumbing and electrical. Open Sunday to Friday. 631-0911.
In these unsure financial times, protection of your hard-earned financial assets is a priority. We at MI4 Security Cash and Transit Service are sure to grant you peace of mind. Fully insured services. Call us today at 660-7723 or 635-2144. MI4 Security Services Company Limited, keeping Tobago safe.
For the perfect decor to accentuate your home, Lynn's Variety Store has it all. From bedroom and bath sets, dinner sets, household accessories and appliances, even ladies' accessories and brown school shoes. Located at Tino's Mall, Wilson Road, Scarborough, 686-7879.
Renting a vehicle? Come to Save-A-Lot. We have a wide variety of fuel-efficient cars and SUVs at the most affordable prices. Save-A-Lot has been providing Trinidad and Tobago with reliable rentals to meet a variety of transportation needs. From one-day rentals to short-term leasing, let Save-A-Lot get you behind the wheel of a vehicle quickly and affordably, saving you time and money.
Visit the new and improved Belfonds Hardware Limited, number 17 Canby, Mount Pleasant. Spacious showroom for your convenience. All hardware items including blocks, steel, paint, toilet sets, power tools, lumber, and everything plumbing and electrical. Open Sunday to Friday. 631-0911.
In these unsure financial times, protection of your hard-earned financial assets is a priority. We at MI4 Security Cash and Transit Service are sure to grant you peace of mind. Fully insured services. Call us today at 660-7723 or 635-2144. MI4 Security Services Company Limited, keeping Tobago safe.
For the perfect decor to accentuate your home, Lynn's Variety Store has it all. From bedroom and bath sets, dinner sets, household accessories and appliances, even ladies' accessories and brown school shoes. Located at Tino's Mall, Wilson Road, Scarborough, 686-7879.
Welcome back, viewers. We're coming to you live from the studios of Tobago Channel 5, and you are viewing our virtual town hall meeting. This is your opportunity to have conversations with the candidates. We began this evening speaking with Tashia Boris, PDP candidate for Tobago West, and we're moving on to one Mr. Ricardo Philip, independent candidate for Tobago West, offering himself. For those of you who are just joining us, please be mindful that the format that we're using this evening, we'll be spending the first few minutes engaging the candidates on a number of areas that are core topics topics. Then we give just about 35 minutes or so where you have an opportunity to call in. Just to remind you, it's 635-1005 and 635-1412. You can also pose your questions to us via the Facebook Live on Tobago Channel 5. And for those of you in Zoom, you can also contribute your questions via the chat in order for us to be able to present the questions within that segment that's dedicated for the phone lines and those of you posing questions from the public as you join this virtual town hall meeting. So let's welcome our second person here for this evening. Latoya?
Hi, how are you, Mr. Philip?
Oh, I'm doing good. I'm doing great.
Okay.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm delighted to be here. And I trust that we have a wonderful program.
Of course we will. All eyes on you.
So we kind of start up giving you an opportunity. It's probably the easiest question in the lot.
Exactly.
Tell us about yourself. Tell us about yourself in relation to offering, particularly coming to the point of offering yourself as an independent candidate for Tobago West.
Well, my name is Ricardo Philip. I was born in South Trinidad, Destiny to be exact. And I'm living in Tobago for 30 years, almost 30 years now. And I currently live at Wim. So most of the 30 years in Tobago, I live in the west of Tobago. Canby, Mount Pleasant, Lowland. So I'm very familiar with the dynamics of the Tobago West constituency. Tobago for me, it's a blessing. I'm truly happy to be living in Tobago. Tobago has been the place that gave me foundation and strength and purpose and dignity and all that in my life. So I think that I owe Tobago a whole lot in terms of the 30 years almost that I'm living in Tobago. So this election for me has to do with my experience over the years, realizing that we keep having the same problem over and over and over and over as a country, as a nation. And the question for me, what can I do, or what can we do as a people to change the dynamics of that? Because you hear, and based on the many things and projects that have been involved over the years. I have been involved in the newspaper in Tobago, the first national newspaper coming out of Tobago, the first print and press on the island. I have done that. I have done, almost so many different things in Tobago West and Tobago. And you hear the complaints, you hear the needs, you understand the needs, and you can appreciate the needs and desires and the ambition and so on of the people. And you ask yourself, what is fundamentally wrong? What can we do fundamentally to change that? And I realized that our problem is not so much about the bright ideas that we want to do and we fix this and we do that. The problem is our foundation is flawed. And it would continue to fail us if we continue to think that we can build on this. It's like, people into construction realize that if you have a flawed foundation and you try to add to that, you're just adding to the problem. And this has been our politics for a number of years, adding to the problem and not trying to fix the system that governs us. And that's why it's so difficult for not just the PNM, but the UNC and other political parties to deliver to the people. And so basically that's why I'm in this.
All right.
Okay, Mr. Philip, I have a really interesting question to you. Tell me about this independent candidate thing. We are accustomed to a party system. So why you want to go it alone?
Well, I'm not sure it's a party system. We are accustomed to seeing big party and parties one across each other shouting who corrupt and who thief, and we're accustomed to seeing a lot of money being spent and so on. And so there is a confusion, a chaos that exists with that kind of politics. My candidacy, my independent candidacy, represents courage and strength and the ability to stand aside and say, we got to fix this and calling it for what it is. My independent candidacy must inspire courage. It must inspire the need for the ordinary person to come forward and stand and take part in this process. The understanding that you have too many of our voting population outside of the process. And that's a sad thing for me. It's a sad reality for Trinidad and Tobago. And if you're in politics and don't understand and can't appreciate why we are in a position where most of 50%, almost 50% of our voting population do not go to the poll, then something you're missing the point. So independence suggests that we can't step away from all that, what we call system and so on, and step up the plate. We have to fix this country, and all of us have to be part of it.
All right. Tell me something. Give us a sense of what is your vision for Tobago, and how do you see yourself ensuring that is achieved if you are successful and elected as one of the persons within the parliament structure, which is 1 in 41?
Tobago, like most country in the world, and like everybody else in the world, as a matter of fact, the people of Tobago, that is, have the same desire to succeed. ambition, their creativity, and avenues to grow, and so on. And so the problem with Tobago now is that it's stifled. I live here, I do business here. When I did the Pillar project, it was almost impossible to really run that project successfully. Every single thing that I had to go to Trinidad to go out of Tobago for it. So Tobago needs to open up. We need to open up Tobago so we can have access to the rest of the world. And the rest of the world can have access to us in a timely fashion, in developing our ability to trade and to do business and so on. This idea that there's a Tobago politics and there is a Tobago culture in an insular sort of setting has to change. We need to invest in new industries in Tobago. This idea of tourism has to be our mainstay, and the THA being our largest employer must change in order for Tobago to grow. And I see when you talk about new investment in new industries, what you do is that you automatically take care of tourism and every other aspect of Tobago's development. So if I elected into Parliament, these are the things that I would do. I would push for opening up our port system. I would push for investment in new industries in Tobago, in manufacturing, in agriculture, in technology, and so on. And that is the kind of push you want to make, because as I said before, if Tobago doesn't have the right foundation, then Tobago cannot grow, no matter what your nice ideas about development is. And so it's important that Tobago, we have a new and a vibrant private sector in Tobago.
Interesting. You mentioned so much great plans and you talk so much about your strength, but as a human being, as a candidate, you must have some weaknesses or challenges that you think you're going to face going to this pool. Tell us, what are your vulnerabilities? Any weakness that you may have?
Well, in my campaign and my understanding of politics, see, you cannot get into politics, you can't get into the desire to be elected if you don't understand what the fundamental problems and what the definition of representations are. Representation over the years have been, we elect a candidate, we elect a representative, and when you go in there, we expect you to do for us the things that you think are important for us. My candidacy must represent the understanding and true representation that it's not about what I would do for you, but what you would have me do for you. That change the dynamics of representation. So when I get in there, it must be on the consultation of the people. It must be on the ideas, right on the ideas of the people that I represent, and not so much I go in there thinking I have all the answers. And this is the politics we face now. And that is why there's a failing over the years in terms of delivery, a failing in actually matching the ambitions and the desires of the people. Because this idea that the representative understand and can solve your problem, rather than you saying, this is how we want you to do it. And that's the difference to me in terms of my representation. So one man, yes, one man can start it, but one man cannot carry it. No small group can. No small party can. No party by itself can. And that has been our tradition in terms of our representation.
You made a very interesting point earlier regarding the issue of employment in the Tobago space, where it is, we have a lot of the persons being currently employed in the public sector, whether it be the THA, the government in the Tobago space, and that it needs to transition. Give us some sense of how you will propose that transition takes place so that we don't continue into the foreseeable future where the majority of Tobago continues to rely heavily for employment on the THA and the government sector.
And there's no attempt to prevent the THA from being a large employer and so on. But what you're trying to do is you have a problem in Tobago where the young people are finding it difficult to grow and to stay in Tobago. They're extremely difficult. I know of hundreds and thousands possibly of young people who have left Tobago. And the beautiful thing about Tobago and the Tobago people is that you have proven that you can go to any part of the world and do great things and accomplish anything that you set your mind to. That is a fact. Whether it's Trinidad or America or wherever part of the world, you have proven that you're more than capable, like anybody else and like everybody else. The problem here is that we don't have the opportunities here to keep our young people here. And so when you create new industries, what that does, there's a need for scientists, and a need for engineers, and a need for all sorts of different type of skills, and that you automatically expand your job opportunities, automatically expand new opportunities, a new career, and the pursuit of new career. Together with that, what you want to do is to create a campus facility in Tobago and encourage universities from all over the world. The campus is owned by the government, and you have a facility, as a matter of fact, and you encourage campuses from all over the world to come and run programs in Tobago. Some of you may have to subsidize the government, but you encourage, so you create the opportunities right here in Tobago for the young people of Tobago, rather than having to leave and go out. When you go outside and you get a taste of outside, you really don't want to come back here, because what are you coming back to? And so this is a challenge that we face in Tobago as it regards to development and creating opportunities.
Let's continue with employment, but let's look at an angle where the employment rate in Tobago probably will be correlated to crime. We have been seeing a steady rise of crime on the island here. So what are your plans? Do you think that we have a sufficient crime fighting strategy in Tobago? Or if elected, what are your ideas or plans as it relates to crime on the island?
Crime fighting is a social problem, social and economic problem, and not necessarily one of national security. And so building new police station doesn't necessarily mean that you understand the dynamics of the rationale or the reason for the increase in crime. Young people, it's a sense of frustration, a sense of lack of opportunities, a sense of hopelessness, and so on. And what you really want to do is to create opportunities to deal with that. You see, understand what I'm saying. If you understand the fundamental problems and you work on fixing that, then you would have solved a number of problems along the way. Automatically, almost naturally solve a number of problems. Or it won't be that difficult to solve. But when you're trying to patchwork the system, patchwork the politics, we build a police station. But what is the reason why you build a police station? Is there a need for a police station? If you understand, or if you think that the problem is crime and young people, then I understand the rationale for building a police station. But if you understand it's a social problem that needs a number for the aspect to fix, in order to fix that, then it's a different scenario. So I'm saying to you that personally, I know and I understand, and I wish we all can understand this. The fundamental problems, the bad foundation that we inherited for a number of years is the reason why we are failing so badly.
All right. So we're going on to what is another issue that people want to get the views of candidates on. Land titles is a big issue in the Tobago space, and more specifically, we know that the AG would have presented an account for the process in making things smooth and so on. But the real issue in Tobago continues to be whether or not persons have lived on this land for a number of years. My grandfather might have received it from his grandfather, and then I now inherit it because I live there. However, there's no land deed, or there are no titles to indicate such. How do you see yourself treating with that overall issue of land titles in the Tobago space?
When you have important issues like these, and that exist for a number of years, you really want to get the widest possible participation and views on how we should handle this. I think this has been handled too often by just a few people and their own views of how they think it should happen. Because the stories are diverse, the stories are different, and the stories are unique. I remember a situation where somebody came up with a crown deed, and this crown deed seems legitimate. It seems that this person had the right to, and then lo and behold, the THA come and just say, no, this is not here. And so there's a lot of confusion in this scenario. So we need to have the widest possible view and the participation of the entire Tobago population. What are the uniqueness and what are the causes of some of these problems, and then take a step in the right direction based on consensus and the information that are available to determine how to solve this problem. We try to solve problem too often by just a narrow perspective and a narrow view of the entire problem at this scene. No,
but what I think the question is trying to get at is, if you're saying there needs to be a system, what are you proposing as the system?
I don't know. Not that I don't know. You can't know what system that you're going to propose if you don't understand what's the problem. And I think, okay. Yeah, you really can't. I mean, any attempt to do that really just trying to play, politically correct and so on. So you got to understand what's the problem before you propose a system that decide what we're going to do, how we're going to treat with this.
Okay, I see. Let's talk a little bit about tourism, because sure. That is a sore point for many on the island, especially with COVID now, etc. What are your recommendations to improve or develop tourism on the island?
Tourism. We've been played by the whole idea of tourism.
Played?
We've been played. And it's unfortunate we're in this situation where we're now seeing tourism is not sustainable. It's very fragile in my view. It has always been. COVID brought out a lot of exposed a lot of flaws in terms of how we see our economic development and so on, and what we consider important. And tourism has been exposed for what it really is. And while a lot of people on this island, this Tobago has built good families and have built careers and so on in tourism, we can't disband it. But as I said before, if you develop Tobago in the way that Tobago should be developed, what you're going to find happening, especially if you have a campus in Tobago and you have new industries, you start people coming in for all kinds of different reasons, and tourism will be taken care of. And so I don't see investing heavily, and as a matter of fact, there are so many countries in the Caribbean, as a matter of fact, who have the same nice sea and sun and greenery and so on. So I don't know that we should be focusing on tourism as a mainstay, but rather focusing on developing other areas, and tourism will be taken care of. And that's basically my view.
All right. So we move from tourism, just to touch very quickly on the issue of internal self-government. It's something it has been on the table for a number of years, and once again, it's a focal point in this general election period. What are your thoughts specific to the Tobago internal self-governance, to the Tobago internal self-governance bill that would have been before the Parliament, and how do you see yourself reintroducing or ensuring that this becomes a focal point once again, if elected as the MP for Tobago West?
There is a politics that we have not explored as a people, as a country, because you have to understand the history of this Tobago self-governance and autonomy and so on. And we're still not sure, and in my own observation, and very few people on the ground can say for a fact or give a definition of what this self-government idea is and what we're talking about. So if you're talking about self-government and you're not talking about constitutional protection and guarantees for the people, then you're not really talking to a lot of people. It has always been a political argument, and I think almost by default, if you decide to pursue politics in Tobago, the first thing you talk about is constitutional separation and autonomy and so on. But being pro-anti-Trinidad doesn't necessarily mean that you're pro-Tobago. We gotta figure that out. Being anti-Trinidad and classifying Trinidad as an oppressor doesn't necessarily mean that you're pro-Tobago and the people of Tobago. And so, personally, I recommend that we have some kind of public referendum on this issue of self-government for Tobago, so we get a true picture. One of the things I see happen over the years is that there are institutions have been pursuing this idea, and with a narrow group of supporters and so on. And then they come up with this notion that, okay, because we have 6,000 people, I think the PNM had mentioned that we had some symposium and we had 6,000 people participated. This must be, I have never heard and never experienced in Tobago the idea of a public referendum on this subject, where all the people get to vote and have a say on the subject. That has to be the approach on any kind of move forward for Tobago in terms of autonomy and self-government. We must have the widest possible participation, and that's the hallmark of a democracy. If you don't have that, what you would have is a division. And to be honest with you, in my personal opinion, a lot of people don't even care about that. A lot of people want to explore the politics that we have not explored, and that is to strengthen the relationship between Trinidad and Tobago. When you look at the dynamics of the people between Trinidad and Tobago, what you see happening is that there's an intertwine, an almost unbreakable, attached intertwine between the people of Tobago and the people of Trinidad. The population of Trinidad is quarter of the population of Trinidad is Tobago. Quarter of the population in Trinidad is Tobago. So when you start to talk about self-dividing, and you have to really be clear. And you have to allow people's perception and ideas and what that means to them. And we don't have that. So I prefer to explore the politics that we have not explored, and to find ways, again, to strengthen the relationship between Trinidad and Tobago.
All right, you are running as the candidate for Tobago West, independent candidate for Tobago West. And one of the very popular issues that has come up within recent times, within the last year or two, is the airport relocation project. What are your thoughts specifically on that project, and how do you believe you can impact any kind of change and or progress in going forward if you are elected as the Member of Parliament for Tobago West?
The premise on which that project was undertaken was very flawed. The sandal attachment to it, and that was distasteful. And the way in which the government went in there was also very, very poor taste. What should have happened is that you supposed to have a more civil approach to dealing with these kind of matters. These are matters of the heart. You're talking about people, tradition and the history, and so you really can't go in there like bullies and just, and at the end of it, your arrangement is not solid and nobody is asserting, and then some people get and then you say, that was just horrible in the way in which it happened. And so there's very little you can do because that wheel is already spinning. But if you have to if I am elected into Parliament and have to supervise or undertake that kind of project, I would approach it very, very differently. So, you know, it is what it is, and I'm not sure that there's anything anybody can really do, given how far it has reached. Some people have gotten paid, and people are moving ahead and so on. But it was really poor taste in the way they handled it.
Well, it's interesting that you make that point. So if you are elected, the stage at which it's at now, I think that's what people want to get a sense of.
Yeah.
What will you do? Will you continue to advance it? Will you make changes? Will you adjust how it's delivered? Will you oppose it? How would you respond to it as the MP for Tobago West if you're elected?
Well, quite frankly, Tobago needs the airport to be expanded, and then you can't take that away. And if I have to treat with that issue, you try to plaster some of the damage that is already done. You know, you try to find out, you go in and find out what your concerns are, what is your dissatisfaction, and how can I help in this regard. So in terms of policy change and so on, there's very little you probably can do, but you can ease the pressure and the hardship and the pain that people have to go through with the institution already existing. So I think that is what I would do. You know, go in there and find out what can I do, how can I fix this, how this can be done, how we can, you know, whatever you can do at this point in time, you're actually doing, putting bandages and giving people a little painkiller and so on, making sure that they are able to survive this. Outside of that, it's already spinning. And the rationale behind it has been flawed from the beginning. And I think, you know, it is what it is.
Let's continue along the vein of development and infrastructure. You know, there's comparison between Scarborough being the capital and also the development of the Crown Point area. But yet this development seems a bit skewed, private sector doing their own thing, but there's no proper development or urbanization plan for Tobago as it seems. What are your plans as it relates to developing those two areas, Scarborough improving it to be a better capital and also Crown Point as it moves forward in its development thrust?
PLM has never been ready to govern this country. They are not ready now to govern and manage, and they will never ever be ready to do that. Simply because their view on development has nothing to do with an inclusion of all. It's really always surrounded and centered around, you know, their own party view on how this should be done and that should be done. Scarborough belongs to all of us in Tobago, and Scarborough should be, regardless of, you know, you look at Grenada and you look at some of these other islands, when you get off the vessel, the plane, and you enter the capital, it's really fascinating to see. You know, it's nice, interesting, go to Grenada and the seafront there with the nice seats and so on. And there's so much of patchwork in Scarborough, too much patchwork, and they call that development. You go to Barbados and you see, as a tourism destination, you see how nice it is structured and so on. Crown Point to me is an entertainment hub, and you want to develop it along that line. You go to St. James, you go to Barbados, and you go to Lawrence Gap, and you realize how you know, happening it is. Young people and tourists and everybody pack in that area because it is an entertainment hub. Crown Point has that potential, but you have to develop Crown Point. What is happening now is that the private sector is trying their best to do, and you know, everybody trying, and it's a competition down there, and it's chaotic. Scarborough, on the other hand, seems neglected. Nobody really cares about Scarborough. So if I'm elected, these are the kind of things you push for, to develop Scarborough in its entirety, to preserve some of the historics in Scarborough, to expand and to restore and create this interest in Scarborough. When you come to Scarborough, you want to get out of Scarborough fast, as quick as possible, as we speak. Crown Point is traffic jam and is chaos. So there's no real plan. But there must be a plan to develop Scarborough and Crown Point separately because of the two interests that people have in Scarborough and Crown Point.
Okay, thank you for that response.
So viewers, you are viewing us here, public conversations with the candidates at this virtual town hall meeting. We're currently in conversation with Ricardo Phillip, the independent candidate for Tobago West. We want to remind you viewers that this is your time to join the conversation. You can join us via phone at 635-1005 or 635-1412. You can also provide your comments to us on Facebook. Go directly to the Tobago Channel 5 page under the live, and you give us your comments and questions there, and you can also post your comments via the Zoom link, those of you who are joining us via Zoom. So at this point we go to a break and we'll be right back.
In these unsure financial times, protection of your hard-earned financial assets is a priority. We at MI4 Security Cash and Transit Service are sure to grant you peace of mind. Fully insured services. Call us today at 660-7723 or 635-2144. MI4 Security Services Company Limited, keeping Tobago safe.
For the perfect decor to accentuate your home, Lynn's Variety Store has it all. From bedroom and bath sets, dinner sets, household accessories and appliances, even ladies' accessories and brown school shoes. Located at Tino's Mall, Wilson Road, Scarborough, 686-7879.
Renting a vehicle? Come to Save-A-Lot. We have a wide variety of fuel-efficient cars and SUVs at the most affordable prices. Save-A-Lot has been providing Trinidad and Tobago with reliable rentals to meet a variety of transportation needs. From one-day rentals to short-term leasing, let Save-A-Lot get you behind the wheel of a vehicle quickly and affordably, saving you time and money.
Visit the new and improved Belfonds Hardware Limited, number 17 Canby, Mount Pleasant. Spacious showroom for your convenience. All hardware items including blocks, steel, paint, toilet sets, power tools, lumber, and everything plumbing and electrical. Open Sunday to Friday. 631-0911.
Welcome back to our virtual town hall meeting, coming to you live from the studios of Tobago Channel 5. We want to thank all of you viewing with us on Facebook Live via our Zoom link as well. And for those of you who are tuned in to Pulse 89.5 FM. At the moment, we are chatting with our second candidate for this evening. And just to remind you, this is day one of 3 days where we'll be engaging all our candidates for Tobago East and Tobago West. In this segment, we're inviting you to call in at 635-1005 and 635-1412, as well as send your questions via Zoom and via our Facebook Live. We just want to remind you, for those persons that are calling in, we'd like you to be as precise as possible with the question, as we've designated 1 minute for your question, and in return, your candidates have a 2-minute time limit to respond to the questions. Of course, the intention is really to get in as many questions as possible. So I understand we have some questions coming in already from social media, and we'd start with, we have this question coming in: accountability and auditing are major issues in Tobago. How do you intend to advocate for a change in this regard? Ricardo?
Accountability and auditing. I think one of the problems you have in Tobago with the political call for autonomy and expansion is that you're not talking also about how do we be accountable to the people. And so, you know, we have to be able to respond to the national system of accountability. But, you know, for me, it's really about strengthening the institution that hold public officers accountable. Integrity Commission, you have to give them the power to arrest, and that's one of my proposals, to investigate, to arrest, and to prosecute public officials. And there's a number of systems that you need to ensure that guarantees you accountability. Accountability cannot be a promise, a political promise. We're going to be accountable and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. We're tired of that. We're tired of those promises. But to ensure that there are agencies and institutions that guarantees that public officials are held accountable. And I think that's what you need to strengthen those agencies and give them powers to take action against people who may have different ambition and desires and so on.
All right. So I just again to remind our viewers, for those of you on the Facebook Live, we've got your Zoom link, and I see some persons are asking about it. So just to remind you, the meeting ID for those persons who want to join us via Zoom, 825-6137-6518. So you may be hearing us, you may be looking on. For those who want to join us via Zoom, it's 825-6137-6518, and we'll also post it on screen so that you can follow from there. And to remind you, the phone line is 635-1005 and 635-1412.
So I guess we can ask a question until we wait for those coming in from social media. Tell us a bit more about your specific skills or where your qualifications, where do they really lie?
Well, I'm self-taught. I'm autodidact. I have always come from a very struggled past, hard, difficult past, and learned from the school of hard knocks, as they would say. But along the line, I did some training myself. I'm a graphic artist, a publisher. That's the business that I operate now. So I have been in so many different things over my life that allow me to develop into the individual that I am now. So there is no degree or no, doctorate and so on, but I consider myself widely experienced and knowledgeable on issues and on life. And I think that that's all you need to do, have your heart in the right place, and the kind of experience and the boldness and so on that you need to have to represent and to lead.
Okay, great. So we have a question on screen. The decision to run as an independent candidate is a brave one, so congratulations to that. As a potential candidate for Tobago West, the hub of tourism for Tobago, what unique plans or ideas that you have? Well, we discussed this before, but you can elaborate some more for the future development and diversification of tourism.
For me, you target tourism by developing, as I said, in new industries. You really don't want to continue to pursue tourism as the mainstay, economic mainstay for Tobago. And you need to develop in new industries, as I said, in manufacturing, in agriculture, in food processing, in technology, and so on. When that happens, then you will, of course, take care of tourism. And then it's just a minor adjustment here, a minor adjustment there. And because you would have already attract people, we have chocolate production happening in Tobago, we have cheese production already happening in Tobago. We need to expand these industries, new industries, so that these people can compete with the rest of the world. So I think if you do that, then you deal with the issue of tourism in not necessarily comprehensive, but in a really good way.
Okay, coming in from Lance, he's saying, what do you see as the 5 matters of highest priority for Tobago? Your top 5.
I don't have a top 5. I don't have a top 3, and I don't have a top 1. What I can say, Tobago matters because of the size of the island, are all equally important and crucial in terms of the development. So they must develop side by side. There is no 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But I would say this though, that economics is one of the major things on people's mind. They want opportunities and they want to be able to earn and grow and develop. So I think I would put, not necessarily at 1, but I think I would put I would say, because the story that you hear every day, economic development for Tobago as.
Okay.
Right, so we have a caller on the line now. Caller?
We may have missed that call.
All right, so
we'll get back.
All right, so we'll get back to the...
Following what you were saying, though, you may not have a definite plan, but
not a definite plan, but a priority.
Okay, well, tell us for the first 100 days.
Just before we go, I think we have a caller. We have a caller back online.
Yes, I'm online. I have a question for Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
Say, for instance, you do win, or you are elected to represent the people of Tobago for Tobago West. You're one man. Have you decided whether or not you will be going to the
Caller?
or the PNM party?
Caller?
Yes.
Yeah, right. We need you to just speak into the phone a little louder, and you turn off or turn down the volume on any other devices so that we don't get any feedback.
Oh.
Right, so just speak up a little bit for us, and you can go ahead.
Okay, so my question is, if Mr. Phillips wins his seat, he is only one person, okay? He cannot run the parliament. So then he has to decide whether or not he will be joining the UNC party or PNM. Has he thought about this? Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller. All right, so you've got the question there. You are one, and should you not decide to stand alone, have you decided where you would go in terms of the UNC or the PNM party?
There is no standing alone. There is no such thing as in representation. Representation has to do with the people and not a party issue. I don't have to be part of a party to represent the people. As I said to you before, yes, there are going to be some challenges in Parliament in terms of, agreeing and reaching out to other ministers and so on. But I think if the country, you see, the problem we have is we turn our back on our process. As a people, we turn our backs on the process, and parliamentarians get away with murder. I want to encourage that my constituency hold me and the rest of the country, the rest of the parliament accountable. You create that system by ensuring that you can hold them that way. You fix the foundation of that. You fix the definition of that. So there's no need for me to join PNM or UNC or any political party to represent or to offer representation to the people that I'm representing.
Right. So let's not miss the point that the caller is asking. If you have to, are you prepared to lead?
No, that's not the mission. The mission has to do with fundamental changes. The mission has to do with reforming, and therefore there is no. I mean, you reform with the people. A constitutional reform is a people and not a party issue. You know, it's for the people and not a political party or not political parties. Political parties can't move make those move. It's always partisan. You have to. It's really based on the people.
All right, good. So we have another caller coming in. Caller, good night.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, caller.
My question to the candidate is, what do you see as the 5 most critical areas of attention for Tobago? What do you see as the 5 issues that are most critical for the attention of Tobago?
People want to know.
Yes. So the question has come again because people want to know what do you see as the critical
as a politician, you have to, when you give it a second bite of the cherry, you have to take it because you can't avoid the question by repeating the same thing. For me, it's really economics is number one. I think economics. I think the victimization, discrimination, nepotism will fall into that because a lot of people in Tobago have suffered as a consequence. Opportunities, as I said, new investment in new industries. Social services is another issue, especially for senior folks. So generally, as I said, it must happen side by side, but these are some of the things that I think are more pressing on people's mind.
Okay, we have a question coming in via social media from Ryan Alad. He's saying, some proposals have been made for having boundaries that split the waters and therefore resources between Trinidad and Tobago, evenly as opposed to the 6 miles now allowed. What are your views on this, and will you take action or not on this issue?
As I mentioned before, that's the politics that I have not really gotten into in terms of, because that falls under the idea of separation and so on, and what is Tobago and what is Trinidad own. I have not subscribed to that kind of arrangement between Trinidad and Tobago. What I do subscribe to is the idea of strengthening the relationship between Trinidad and Tobago and finding ways to do that. I also like to add that this must be based on the widest possible participation and view of the people of Tobago. So I'm really would not attempt to answer that question in that sense because it's not something I subscribe to, and I really haven't. You're talking about dividing the waters and so on. That is a complicated stuff. That is, what is immediate and what is necessary now is how do we pursue of ensuring that Tobago benefit from this partnership arrangement between Trinidad and Tobago. And I think for me that is more realistic and more possible than what we talked about before. Because I've heard this before, and I've been involved in politics that they espouse these ideas before, and there is no conclusion, there is no possible way out when you look at it in the whole sense. So I like to focus on what is important. I think is important, and what I think is important is the strength of the relationship between Trinidad and Tobago as one state.
Coming back to a question on your skills or expertise, if selected to be a member of parliament and ultimately probably joining forces and being given the opportunity to serve in the cabinet, where do you think are your areas of expertise? Where can you really lead in the development trust for Trinidad and Tobago?
My expertise is really finding the right people to do, what you're pursuing. That is a skill that a lot of politicians do not have, finding the right people, the ability to involve and the ability to identify the right people to help, because you are not there thinking that you know everything and you can do everything, but you find the right people who can. And so I think that ability that transcends political party and transcends the selfishness and the insularity that we see operating in politics, that ability to find the right people, I think is very critical.
All right, so we have another question coming in from social media. And this person is speaking to, do you have a solid plan for the improvement of the food security on the island of Tobago?
Absolutely. When you invest, and as I mentioned in the things of food processing and agriculture and so on, livestock, then you guarantee that you have a very solid food contingency plan for Tobago. And that is absolutely necessary, especially now. And COVID has proven that to us. What we see happening during the pandemic is that a sort of mad rush to give out seedlings and plant up. And this is supposed to be a very solid foundation, solid program with new opportunities and new investment that you must take serious. And so the new industries that I'm talking about include guaranteeing that you have a stable food contingency.
So tell us a little bit more about that concept. How do you see that tying in from the perspective as the MP with responsibility? In other words, are you suggesting that you'd try to ensure that there are more resources that come to Tobago to allow for further investment in developing, that with regards to our food security and so on? How do you see it happening?
Well, you need resources for that, but you also need the expertise and the training and the whole stuff of connecting activities that are involved in development. Development is just about funding. Because again, if you ask for more money, and this is what we see happening, you ask for more money, you get more money, and yet still the problems keep being the same over and over and over. So what you really want is to strengthen the system that will give you that solid foundation. And so technology, equipment, the know-how, bringing the right people to train. I was talking to a supermarket owner one day, and he said, one of the problems I have is, a man come and bring some lettuce and tell me he's selling lettuce, and I bought the lettuce from him and say, well, check me next week again. And then the next week, the following week, he didn't pass. So I said, what happened, boy? What good over there? He said, well, I'll go check it next week. And the following week, he didn't check him because, and his claim was that, they're serious. I said, no, it's not that he isn't serious. He doesn't understand, and nobody has trained him into understanding what is supply and demand and how that cycle works. So he, as a farmer, struggling on his own to provide you with lettuce because he sees an opportunity, but the know-how is where he's struggling. And that is how you develop people, by bringing the expertise and say, okay, this is how you do it. You plant some this week, and next week Wednesday, you plant again, and you create a cycle so that you can supply. And we lack that kind of expertise and exposure in Tobago.
All right, so just to remind our viewers again, I think we have a caller. Caller?
We lost that call, it seems.
All right, so we think we may have lost that call. Just to remind our viewers, the numbers are 635-1005, 635-1412, and you can also pose your questions to us on the Facebook Live, and we would have just had the Zoom link also being posted for your information. Meeting ID 825-6137, 6518 for those of you who are listening in on Pulse 89.5 FM. We're encouraging you to put forward your questions. So, go ahead, Toya.
This has to do a bit, we're coming back to that plan.
So just before we go, so the caller is back.
Oh, great.
All right, so let's take the caller first before we go ahead. Caller, good night.
Hi, good night. Listen, this is a country we are running. This is not Dolly House. You have to know your facts when you're speaking.
All right. Is there a question? All right. Well, I suppose the caller just wanted to make a broad comment. All right. Yeah.
Okay, we want to go back a bit more to your plan. Sometimes constituents feel that persons are politicians rather than representatives because they don't listen to the core needs of your constituents. If you have been listening to the needs of the Tobago people, especially in Tobago West, what are the tasks that you're going to achieve within the first 100 days?
100 days.
Basically, your first 3 months in office.
Yeah, and I know there has been some sort of hallmark or some kind of significant point in politics, the history of politics in Trinidad and Tobago, the first 100 days, and then watching to see what they've done and so on. You know, when you're talking about development, you can't be distracted with those type of limitation or benchmark, you know, that is imposed on you. I think development, when you want to change, when you want to focus on development, there is a process and they have a life of its own. And so I get into Parliament, immediately I start working on developing Tobago and my constituency without having the pressure of 100 days to treat with. I do understand and appreciate the question, but I'm just simply saying that I try to stay away from those type of tradition because ultimately you need to focus on what is important, and I think development, as I said, have its own life, and I would like to focus on that. The thing that I keep saying, for me, equally, the matters that affect the people are equally important. And yes, I understand that people are their economic concerns and needs and so on, and you may want to focus on that a little more, but I don't want to put the pressure of 100 days, what I will do and hope to achieve in 100 days, but what I will do immediately to begin the process of development and opportunities for the people of Tobago and my constituency.
So we have a question coming in from social media. The private sector is not economically viable, whereby Tobago isn't making any money internationally from the private sector. How would you fix this? And two, what systems would you put in place to help Tobago entrepreneurs access funding, even when they do not have the assets to do so?
Well, there are funding available in Tobago right now. The problem is that the funding is available there's a political party influence in these type of scenarios. These organizations are always, you hear people talk from time to time, you know, contaminated with the political influences. You need to fix that. We must fix that. But more importantly, we do not have data on small business in Tobago. You really don't have the small business data. And so you first have to gather the data. What is fundamentally wrong and what is the challenges of small business? And then from there you build on fixing and recommending and making available the kind of resources that people need. There's no infrastructure for small business that one can freely access without having maybe a party influence or without being probably known by a particular political party. But you must have that data. And I think the most important thing for me is to get the data, what is the challenges, what are some of the things that can be done in terms of assisting small business. So you need to know and understand what you're getting into and how to treat with it.
All right, so you are particularly running in an area where it is the incumbent is there currently associated with a political party. What do you feel sets you apart or distinguishes you to say that you should be elected and not the incumbent?
Well, as I said, traditionally we have, and this is what politics has been basically running on in Trinidad and Tobago, that election time comes and the people will vote for their favorite political party, so there's really no need to talk about the issues. There's really no need. You go around to and the tradition every 5 years, you go into the constituency and you tell the people are going to do better this time, and you pass to the big trucks and you give out some jerseys, and and that's traditionally what politics is. For me, as I said, we need to come back to debating the issues, what are important to the people. So for me, what set me apart is that I am talking about a different understanding or different definition of representation rather than what we are accustomed to. I am not promising you anything except for the fact that you must hold me accountable, that you are the one going to drive me. I remember campaigning in Canaan and two young guys came up to me and said, "Ras, what you going to do for me?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "What are you going to do for me?" I said, "But it's not so much about what I will do for you, but what you will have me do for you." And they struggle to understand that concept. So that's the distinction between my campaign and my representation or my candidacy than everybody else. That the representation must come from you. I'm just at the conduit in which I go to Parliament and speak on your own behalf, rather than I go into Parliament and you sit back and you say, "Well, look, Ras, let me see what you're going to do for me." And you ain't do nothing for me, sir. No, I want you to tell me. You live in the community. You must understand the challenges that you have there. And by virtue of that, you say to me, "Listen, this is what we want and this is what we need."
Okay, so we have a question coming in from social media from Trotman O'Neill. What are your views on climate change and its possible impacts on the island, specifically?
I think it's real. There's a lot of debate over the world in terms of whether it's real or not. Tobago, we have to observe the pattern that is taken in terms of the narrative and the kind of recommendation and the changes that is necessary, because we to some extent depends on tourism. And I think we can't dismiss the claims. We have to look at the both sides of the argument. But we have to pay attention as a tropical island in terms of, because more hurricanes and storms, and there's a whole lot of competing theories and ideas in terms of what may cause the fires and so on. So we got to pay attention to these issues and act accordingly.
All right. So believe it or not, Ricardo, we're just at about an hour, approaching an hour in terms of our segment for this evening, and we want to give you an opportunity to be able to say to the Tobago public, to speak to your constituents. Why should they elect Ricardo Phillips as the candidate for Tobago West, as the next member of Parliament for Tobago West?
As I said before, you can't build on a foundation that is weak and flawed. You really can't. You have to understand what the fundamental problems are. The politics of the day, especially our election campaign, and what we see happening against the various parties, is a consequence of when you don't understand what the problems are. The accusation, who funding, who financing, who and all that. It's really when you lack that understanding of what the challenges are. I propose to fix the system, or reform the system rather, that manage and govern all of us, because they are flawed. And no matter what fancy term, what fancy projects and policy and proposal, as we are accustomed to, you planning to do, will not work. I can guarantee you this, and not because I despise the PNM or I despise the UNC. The fact of the matter is, whether the PNM or the UNC wins the election, there is never going to be any change for the good for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, because the pathway to representation is flawed. The way in which they do business is flawed. The denial of the problems is what causing us and force us into a culture of corruption and a culture of lawlessness. And I think that is what I'm going to do, to rally the people in terms of what we can do to fix this.
All right.
Well said, Mr. Ricardo Philip, independent candidate for Tobago West. We look forward to your success at the polls, and all the best to you.
Thank you so much.
Julian?
All right. So viewers, you are here, and we were just chatting with Ricardo Philip, our independent candidate for Tobago West, and we want to commend him at that. Coming forward as an independent candidate is always something commendable, and taking that grand step in a system in our country where we are mainly governed by political parties in the way in which we operate. So that's the norm that we're accustomed to. So viewers, you are viewing our virtual town hall meeting. We're coming to you live from the studios of Tobago Channel 5. This is day 1 of 3 days where we will be engaging all the candidates who are offering themselves for Tobago East and Tobago West. And up next, we look forward, after we return from the break, we'll be having the current MP for Tobago East, and of course offering herself once again, Ayanna Webster Royce. So we go to a break and we'll be right back.
In these unsure financial times, protection of your hard-earned financial assets is a priority. We at MI4 Security Cash and Transit Service are sure to grant you peace of mind. Fully insured services. Call us today at 660-7723 or 635-2144. MI4 Security Services Company Limited, keeping Tobago safe.
For the perfect decor to accentuate your home, Lynn's Variety Store has it all. From bedroom and bath sets, dinner sets, household accessories and appliances, even ladies' accessories and brown school shoes. Located at Tino's Mall, Wilson Road, Scarborough, 686-7879.
Money.
Visit the new and improved Belfonds Hardware Limited, number 17 Canby, Mount Pleasant. Spacious showroom for your convenience. All hardware items including blocks, steel, paint, toilet sets, power tools, lumber, and everything plumbing and electrical. Open Sunday to Friday. 631-0911.
In these unsure financial times, protection of your hard-earned financial assets is a priority. We at MI4 Security Cash and Transit Service are sure to grant you peace of mind. Fully insured services. Call us today at 660-7723 or 635-2144. MI4 Security Services Company Limited, keeping Tobago safe.
For the perfect decor to accentuate your home, Lynn's Variety Store has it all. From bedroom and bath sets, dinner sets, household accessories and appliances, even ladies' accessories and brown school shoes. Located at Tino's Mall, Wilson Road, Scarborough, 686-7879.
Money.
Visit the new and improved Belfonds Hardware Limited, number 17 Canby, Mount Pleasant. Spacious showroom for your convenience. All hardware items including blocks, steel, paint, toilet sets, power tools, lumber, and everything plumbing and electrical. Open Sunday to Friday. 631-0911.
Yes, so viewers, welcome back. We are here coming to you live from the studios of Tobago Channel 5. It's conversations with our candidates, and this is our virtual town hall meeting. Today is day 1 of 3 days going forward, where we'll be speaking with all our candidates from Tobago East and Tobago West as we bring the conversation to you. You also have an opportunity to participate in the conversation, whether you call us in directly at 635-1005 or 635-1412. You can also join us via the Zoom link for those of you who want to contribute questions, as well as our Facebook Live, Tobago Channel 5. Send your comments in directly under the Tobago Channel 5 Live so that we'll be able to, of course, engage the candidate as well to share the information with you. We would have had 2 individuals thus far, 2 candidates for Tobago West, and this evening our 3rd candidate in the spotlight is none other than our current MP and also vying to return as the MP for Tobago East, Ayana Webster Roy. Welcome.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, so we want to start with what we consider to be the very simple question. Tell us about Ayana. Tell us what we don't know so far and what you want to remind people of.
Okay, so Ayana Webster Roy is a country girl by birth and by nature, by heart. A wife, a mother. I have 3 children, 2 girls, teenage girls, and an 8-year-old son. I like to garden, I like to cook, I like to eat, I like to dance. I can't sing, but I sing. For recreation, I tend to do soap making. For passion for community work and community building and helping people to achieve the goals. Some of my fun times was working with you at education. When I came back from being away and came back home and became a trainee in a program that I was running when I left Tobago. But at the end of the day, I'm just down to earth, humble, hardworking, focused, strongly believe in delivering to people, but maintaining my integrity, maintaining that common touch and that approachable nature that I have.
So, you know, when I hear Ayana speak, I'm naturally inclined to say to her, what would you say to all your other opponents, those who are offering themselves to challenge you for the seat?
You know, offering yourself a public service is not an easy feat. And I would say, well, hats off, well done for putting yourself out there and offering yourself a service. At the end of the day, I believe that we should focus on Tobago's development. But I know that I am the best woman for the job.
Well, you have been in office so far, but let's talk about what are some of the challenges that you face, where you think you didn't deliver, and what you could have done better for the people of Tobago.
In terms of delivery, what I would say is helping people to understand the role and the function of an MP. In Tobago, we tend to blur the lines, so that would have presented a challenge, but I have the ability to work around problems, and I love collaborating with people. So sometimes when persons would have come to me with issues that didn't fall under my remit, I had no problem in reaching out a hand to somebody from the assembly or any agency, even the voluntary sector, to be able to assist persons. Going forward, one of the things I would like to see different in Tobago East is the way we perceive ourselves. I would have liked to see us change in terms of our mindset. We would have invested a lot in the physical infrastructure development. However, when you interact with the average person in Tobago East, we're still looking at, you know, how to get our early morning work, how to get our work in the THA, when I would have liked to see us more looking at how do I get opportunities to create business? How do I take my skills and transfer my skills or my hobbies into something that could earn an income or create opportunities for employment? As the Member of Parliament for Tobago, if I had the opportunity to work closely with persons to help to change minds through programs so that we become the innovators, the creators, the producers, you know, the influencers, that is one area I think that I could have strengthened on and will focus on going forward after August 10th.
Okay.
Internal self-government is a big issue on the Tobago space right now, and in fact Trinidad and Tobago. We would have had a situation where one would have noted that the Joint Select Committee, which would have been headed by the Honorable Camille Robinson Regis, and so on, in treating with the matter of the bill, and we would have also seen a scenario where it has now lapsed in the Parliament. What do you see that you'd be able to do differently in terms of ensuring that we get to that point in going forward once you're returned as the MP for Tobago East?
But Julian, the work of the committee was saved for the new parliament. So when the new parliament commenced, the work would be there for us to continue. What I must point out is that even though we would have had consultations throughout Tobago and Trinidad, and even though we would have wanted the bill to progress further, it calls for a special majority of the House. So the fact that we have to have that collaboration and that agreement of the majority, the bill would have had to go to, as you said, the committee stage. I'm confident that once we continue the work, and once we don't compromise on the core of what the people of Tobago want, because it reflects the voice of Tobago, we could get it done. But at the end of the day, it requires a special majority. So it is up to us, those who sit on the government, I'm saying those of us who sit on the government bench, but those of us who represent Tobago, to influence all our colleagues in the parliament on both sides of the house, so that we get the bill to progress to the stage where it is passed and then enacted, and we, the people of Tobago, get the autonomy we crave. However, it's something I always caution us as Tobagonians. We demand the autonomy, we want it, but how are we preparing ourselves for this eventuality? Are we positioning ourselves so that when we do get the autonomy, we don't squander it? Are we looking to see how do we build and develop a thriving private sector in Tobago? How are we looking to develop our agricultural sector so that we don't have to depend on things coming from Trinidad? How are we positioning our children to embrace non-traditional skills and non-traditional sectors? So when we get the full autonomy, we are able in Tobago to create a sustainable economy and sustainable development opportunities for all. The autonomy will come. How are we as Tobagonians position ourselves?
Yeah. It's interesting that within the mix of responding there, you made mention of the private sector. And that's also one of the real issues that people have raised concerns with. In our current Tobago space, between the THA and the government, and you would have also been directly responsible in that ministry with CAS and so on, a great proportion of Tobago is employed by the government. How do you see yourself as MP contributing to ensure that we seek to improve the private sector in such a manner that we can move away from this heavy reliance exclusively on employment through the government system?
And it's about changing mindset. That's number one. There's this perception that if you're not working for the government, if you're not working for the THA, you don't have a job. We have to start to be more risk takers in Tobago, especially in Tobago East, and start telling our children, nothing wrong if you're an entrepreneur, nothing wrong if you're not working an 8 to 4 in some office. It might be better if you're an agripreneur. For example, I engaged some young fellas in Louisville, and I remember leaving my constituency office and visiting a farmer, Maxlon. And Maxlon never worked a day for the state. Maxlon had first degree, second degree, doing a PhD in agriculture and using the skill to help to build a thriving little economy up there. I remember they had a, what they call a market day, where people from the community came up with things they produced and were selling it. So for us in Tobago, we have to look as though how we motivate people to consume local, support local, or local services or local goods. That's number one. Because for us to really build the private sector and build the economy, we have to trust that what we produce is good enough and utilize that, number one. Number two, again, I go back to the change in the mindset. How do we tell our children to look outside the traditional jobs? Prime Minister is talking about creating a digital society, a digital economy. It presents opportunity for us now to help our young people, those who are into tech and who are into, creating software and coding, for them to train themselves and position themselves to be the ones to create the platform on which we would have the digital economy emerge, where we move away from the going to an office to work, but creating a platform where you work from home, creating a platform where you don't have to go into town or go to Roxborough to access a government service, but get it done from the comfort of your own home. How do we start the conversation with our children? And it speaks to our education system as well and our curriculum. How do we structure it so that we prepare our children for this new society that we want to create?
Okay, I have a question as it relates specifically to Tobago East. We have seen development in the Roxborough area, and we are glad for those infrastructural development, but there is a concern about neglect within the Palatavia to Bloody Bay area. What are your plans for development on that side of the island?
Okay, so I will first address the issue about neglect. I don't think I neglected any part of Tobago East. As Member of Parliament, I made it my duty to remain on the ground connected, so I would have constantly gone out to the communities in the constituency, either through roving office days or doing walkabouts, etc. Having said that, In Roxborough, there was a strategic move to develop a second commercial town for Tobago, and that was a strategic move to build within the Tobago East constituency a commercial hub to bring people into that space for employment to access services. Outside of that, in places such as Palo Verde, Bloody Bay, Lansme, there's potential for development. There's a commitment from the National Petroleum MP to establish around the north side one of the first fueling facilities specifically for fishermen in that area. There are plans by the Tobago House Assembly to reconstruct the jetty in Palo Verde. Now that creates an opportunity for us to really create a booming, thriving fishing industry around the north side. But outside of that, we have to look at tourism. I love going to the north side. I particularly love visiting Castara because they understand the business of tourism. We could look at how we could use the natural resources we have, the natural beauty of Northside Tobago, and create an ecotourism thrust around that area. Apart from that, housing. How do we help our persons who live in the north side to access housing within their own space? A lot of them say to me, we have to come out, but we want to maintain the family ties, helping to, through an accelerated housing program, to have people live within the space, opportunities for housing, opportunities to implement through the tourism sector. So those are some of the things we're looking at as well.
Okay, I want to continue on the tourism sector part. A great percentage of the population see the benefits of tourism, but there are some who also think that tourism is dead. It's a sore point on the island. You being the incumbent, you would have been there with the discussions in terms of the airport development, in terms of rebranding the island of Tobago. What do you say could be done differently to really improve tourism? Because the effort so far, we don't think it has been yielding as much results as we had
the funny thing is, my answer might give me some licks. Because I think the biggest problem with our tourism product is not the destination so much and not really the plan, because we could fix the plan, we would get the arrivals improved by having a new airport, but it is us, the people of Tobago, how we present ourselves when people come to the island. I remember someone saying to me that, you know, Oyo Tobagonians are real rude. And I was taken aback because I thought we were so friendly and warm, but they were comparing us to other islands. So we have to start to change our mindset. Instead of looking at service as servitude, if we say that we really want to develop a tourism product, it starts with each and every one of us. So I was happy when the THA started this initiative, Tourism is All Our Business, showing how everybody should be part of the, building the industry and part of the brand and part of promoting Tobago beyond, because at the end of the day, it is really the people. Yes, the sand, the seas, all well and fine, we have that. But how do we use our personality, or character, or charm to woo people to want to come back? At the end of the day, if you give somebody good service, your brew mightn't be the best, but if they remember the service, they will come back.
Come back.
Yes, definitely.
So as we speak to that, we go into the issue of land titles. And that's no secret, and I suppose for most of Tobago, the challenge continues to be that we live on properties that when we check the deed, because we have to conduct some type of business, it's well outdated.
Yeah.
We know that there would have been efforts made even through the Attorney General's office and so on. What would you say has been done, or what efforts you are aware of thus far, and what do you think can take us in a direction to really try to rectify this issue in the Tobago space?
I am pleased to note that the law has been finalized, and I'm aware that work was done to start in terms of surveying and digitizing and mapping. I remember I had the opportunity to sit in a presentation at the Office of the Attorney General, and at that point in time it was Minister Hines who was leading the process, where there was a presentation where Charlottesville was identified as the community in Tobago where they were going to do the pilot in terms of the mapping of the land and digitizing. However, one person approached me, and it's something we have to take into consideration, said, when you finish mapping and you know exactly how parcels are located and you put the actual titles, parcels, etc., some people may struggle to afford it. and they were asking how could I advocate for some sort of incentive or funding for persons to be able to, to go through the process, because we know it can be costly. That is something that would have to be discussed around the cabinet table, and something I would definitely put forward, because it wasn't only one person who came to me with the idea, and it was a young person. A number of persons would have come to me saying, yes, we are aware that the work would have been started, but would we be able to afford it? And how would the state be able to assist us in that? And it would also call for collaboration with the THA, because, as you know, on many occasions, most of the land matters in Tobago reside in the hands of the THA. So we have to have that continued collaboration. At present, the work that is ongoing is a collaboration between central government and the Tobago House of Assembly.
Let's continue with the land issue, but this time we're moving to the airport expansion process. The question is really whether the process was done with a level of transparency. And for those who felt as if they were not benefiting from the process, how would you as MP in Tobago really help those persons meet their needs? Some persons took the package, some persons have decided to relocate, others are still protesting because they don't believe that the issue was really dealt with Tobago at heart. Being the incumbent, you were there during the process. So one, can you speak more to that? And if you do return, what next steps could be taken to make sure that those who did not accept are now willing to move forward with the airport relocation process?
I felt that at every stage, there was transparency because there's constant conversation. I remember people coming from Trinidad engaging the population in Tobago. I remember the THA engaging the Tobago people in conversation about this matter. So when people say that we weren't transparent, I'm taken aback, because to me it was never any shady deal. There was always constant open discourse. People you will never please everybody when it comes to change. Some people would embrace it, some people would fight change. But I do remember having discussions around the cabinet table and seeing documents where a lot of lands were acquired previously for the same project. So for me, I was taken aback and saying, well, okay, people quarreling about, the land being taken away, but when you look at the document, the land was already acquired. And in terms of treatment, in terms of the what people got in return, I think it was a fair enough deal. At the end of the day, they had government evaluators as well as private evaluators looking at it to see that we give people the best value for what was taken from them. And at the end of the day, when you look at talking about development and progress, is always at a cost. And in compromise, because you're making a compromise, there's no win-win. Everybody going to lose. The state going to lose, you're going to lose. But at the end of the day, what are we working to achieve? We want to have a better airport because we want more arrivals. People have been saying that the airport isn't attracting the type of tourists we want because we don't have the VIP lounge, etc. For us to get that and for us to improve this service, we have to have the facility. So it's a compromise. And in a compromise, you either look at it as a lose-lose or a win-win. It's your perception.
I think there are more matrix and dynamic state, but we will leave it there for now because we have a lot of questions piling up on social media.
We just before we go to the social media questions, one thing, of course, it's in the Tobago space. The persons running against you, particularly in the other parties, have indicated that since the changes in Tobago East, particularly that area, Speyside and so on, and Roxborough de la Fort, where the PDP would have secured in the last THA election, they are staking claims, and I think I heard in a recent political meeting, this has inspired and moved the government to deliver the amount of projects that you have seen. What do you say towards that as MP?
Hogwash. I'm laughing here because I remember in my maiden contribution, my maiden budget debate, that I would have laid out the vision for Tobago East. And at the core of that contribution was Roxborough becoming the second town it used to be. I didn't come Roxborough, I'm from Roxborough. I grew up on the main road. So when people are talking about Roxborough, I feel a sense of pride because I remember the Roxborough as a little girl where we had a bank, we had the magistrate's court. It was a place people used to come from all over the East for market. I remember the Roxborough as a little girl where Republic Day was a big thing. We had the parade. I remember the Roxborough when my sister was born. in the maternity block. So for me, as growing up and seeing Roxborough, go down, it was always something that hurt me as a Roxborough girl. And I wanted the opportunity for us to help to recreate that commercial hub in Tobago East and using Roxborough as the catalyst for that. It's not about just building Roxborough, it's about using this as a platform to really expand Tobago East and let Tobago East be a mover and a shaker in terms of the development of Tobago and a contributor to our economic situation. Coming out of Tobago East, apart from agriculture, produce and products, we should see through opportunities for training and development where we produce the persons who create the platforms for this digital society that Prime Minister is talking about. I believe in the potential of Tobago East, and I will continue to advocate for the people of Tobago East because we must not be left behind.
All right, excellent. Viewers, you are hearing from Ayanna Webster Roy, the current Member of Parliament for Tobago East, and once again offering herself as the candidate for Tobago East as we approach general elections 2020. At this point, we go to a break, and yes, viewers, we are seeing this spike in questions coming in, naturally because this is the incumbent, the current holder of this seat, and we will treat with all those when we return from the break. We'll be right back.
In these unsure financial times, protection of your hard-earned financial assets is a priority. We at MI4 Security Cash and Transit Service are sure to grant you peace of mind. Fully insured services. Call us today at 660-7723 or 635-2144. MI4 Security Services Company Limited, keeping Tobago safe.
For the perfect decor to accentuate your home, Lynn's Variety Store has it all. From bedroom and bath sets, dinner sets, household accessories and appliances, even ladies' accessories and brown school shoes. Located at Tino's Mall, Wilson Road, Scarborough, 686-7879.
Viewers, we are back and coming to you live from the studios of Tobago Channel 5. We are here having public conversations, and we are having conversations with the candidate, and we would have just had the first segment chatting with Ayanna Webster Roy, and we continue at this point inviting you to make your calls 635-1005 and 635-1412 and to provide your questions to us via Zoom and also Facebook. We start back with a caller. Good night, caller. Caller, are you there with us?
Good night.
Yes.
Yes. Are you hearing me clearly?
Yes, caller.
Okay. So my question for Mrs. Webster Roy is that I'm looking on Facebook and I'm seeing comments about she has not done anything for Tobago. So a lot of us may not know. So I would like for her to list a few things. It doesn't have to be everything because it could be a long list. But just a few things that she has done for the people of Tobago. Thank you.
The things, the main things, or whatever you would want to identify as some of the things that you have done for the people of Tobago.
Okay, so first and foremost, one of the items I would like to identify is the work done for protecting our children in Tobago. That was one of my core duty as the Minister of State in the Office of the Prime Minister. I made it my duty to bring the Children's Authority to Tobago, and not only bringing the authority in terms of an administrative office, establishing on the island or assessment center as well as a reception center. So boys and girls in Tobago who are unfortunate enough to be abused. Instead of having for them to go to Trinidad, there's a facility here for them to be taken care of. That's one. Two, through our public education and sensitization efforts, we were able to partner with different agencies and bring a lot of meaningful services to the people of Tobago East. And I'm proud of the fact that, you know, by partnering with NP, we would soon see hopefully very soon see the construction of the very first fueling facility for fishermen on the island. In Tobago, through the Office of the Prime Minister, Central Administrative Services Tobago, we were able to provide training opportunity for over 70-something young people in Tobago every July-August vacation period, where university students and students in sixth form had the opportunity to get on-the-job training, and outside of the training, they had the opportunity to earn some money to assist them, you know, with back-to-school expenses. As the minister with responsibility for Tobago affairs, I remember meeting with, every quarter I met with WASA, Tiantec, Fires, etc. Very early on that happened, and a conversation came up about Tobago not having enough fire officers on the island. And when we train people, a lot of times the training happens in Trinidad, Trinidadians come up and they want to go back to their family. And I was proud when I advocated for training in Tobago. And I was really happy when I saw the first batch of recruits pass out. I said, you know what? This was a really good initiative. I felt happy for Tobago and for Tobagonians for that to happen. Even in terms of bringing the children's court, the family court to Tobago, that is something that both MPs would have advocated for. And we got the support from, you know, our colleagues around the cabinet table. Through WASA and Tiantec, we were able to expand services in some of the communities and expand street lighting in Tobago. We may not have been able to do as much as we wanted, but we were able to see the progress made on the island. In terms of
great, a long list. We can't go through the whole list because we have a lot of questions on social media. And here comes one from Tobago entrepreneurs.
Right. Okay.
The question in the past that focused on tourism development has been centered on the western part of Tobago. However, there is much scope for the development of a robust ecotourism sector for Tobago East. What plans do you have for the development of the eastern part of the island where tourism is concerned? You touched on it before, but I guess reiterate.
Yes, and definitely. I was going through a manifesto before coming on set, and identified as one of the areas for growth and development is the cultural and creative industry, as well as tourism. And we know in Tobago East that we have the oldest rainforest reserve in the Western Hemisphere. We have some of the most beautiful beaches. People talk about Pigeon Point, they need to come to Pirates Bay, and they need to go, to come to some and see some of our beaches. We have really good natural resources in Tobago East that we could develop. But for that to happen, we have to have the investment made in our product. So training of our people for the industry, one, and two, building the plants, ensuring that we have the room stock to attract people, ensuring that we cut the trails. So for example, in Lansami, there are a group of young men that in the community are talking about establishing a trail down to a beach in Lansami and using it as a using that nature trail to create a little ecotourism product down there where they'll be able to do bird watching, take people to the beach and that sort of thing. In Castara, they have this thing called Bonfire Night, which is picking up not only for Tobagonians, but Trinidadians coming across and embracing it. So we have the natural resources, we have the people, we have the person, we have the talent in Tobago East. It's just now for us to harness it and work with the different agencies, ensure we get the support from the Tobago Tourism Agency, buying into whatever incentives are made available through the Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Culture, Ministry of Tourism in Trinidad, how we could harness whatever is available nationally and pump the resources into Tobago East to develop our ecotourism product. And not only that, but to also develop our creative and cultural industry, because that is an area identified for growth.
All right, so we have another question coming in from social media. What do you see as the 5 matters of highest priority for Tobago? What are those 5 areas that you
and it would go based on my interaction with Tobagonians over the 5 years. So number one, as they would always talk about, would be the issue of internal self-government. That is high priority. Number two would be a reliable, efficient, and effective air and sea bridge connection. Number three is access to health care. And not only access to health care, but quality, reliable health care. Outside of that, the other priority issue is employment. And as I would have mentioned before, for me, we have to look outside the traditional sectors and see how we create the opportunities for employment in our island, and particularly in Tobago East. And outside of employment, I'll go to housing as well. And if I'm allowed to add another one?
Sure, go ahead.
Education. I want our children to be the ones who are the top scorers. You know, I want Tobago's children to be the ones making, you know, the big numbers in terms of national scholarship. How do we help our children? How do we help our teachers? How do we help our families so that our children are the ones performing and outranking in the national tests, etc.?
I think those are reasonable top sticks.
Top 6. All right, so we have a caller on the line. Caller, good night.
Good evening.
Yes, caller, good evening.
Hello?
Yes, caller, you go ahead.
Yes, thanks for taking my call. Mrs. Webster Roy, I'm very, very proud of you, and you have my fullest support. I want to ask, though, do you think with the development that has taken place in Roxborough, that the deposed chief secretary had anything to do with it? Thank you.
That the caller?
Deposed. So the previous chief
secretary. Yes, if the previous chief secretary.
I have to give Jack his jacket. I remember when it was February of 2017, shortly after Mr. Charles was elected, I paid a courtesy call. And it was just to be a short informal meet and greet. And that courtesy call turned into about an hour and something of heavy meeting, because it was at that meeting, come courtesy call, that I would have asked the Honorable Chief Secretary to assist me with 3 things. I asked if we could have the Republic Day Parade reintroduced in Roxborough, and he would have indicated to me, he said, we may not be able to fund it, but I would support it. And I said, if I fund it from CAST, would you take the salute and would you, give it your blessings? And it came about, we got the Republic Day Parade reintroduced. I asked how, share with him, some of the challenges women would have shared about having babies almost on the road and that sort of thing, and urging for the building of a hospital. And he said to me, he called Dr. Carrington into the meeting, and he said to me, well, once we could collaborate and get the resources done, you advocate on your end, I push on my end, why not, let's make it happen. And the third thing was getting the Children's Authority established here. Dr. Carrington in that meeting and with Mr. Charles, they both saw the vision I had about wanting to help our children, because we tend to put our head in the sand and pretend we don't have the problem, but it is real in Tobago, and he gave full support. So I would say that some of the development that happened in Roxborough and in Tobago East, I have to give Jackie and give kudos to Mr. Charles for his support as well.
All right. So we move to another question from our social media. The private sector is not economically viable. Tobago isn't making enough money. From the private sector, that is. How would you fix this? And 2, it speaks to the systems. What systems would you put in place to help Tobago entrepreneurs access funding even when they do not have the assets to do so? So this question kind of speaks to the challenges that we would have just touched on earlier. So you could elaborate a little bit more in terms of making that transition to assist the private sector.
Okay, so one of the things that I would encourage us to do first as Tobagonians is to support local. We tend to go away and go outside for things that we could readily access at home. And if we really want to build our thriving private sector, we have to start trusting that our goods and our services have good quality and start supporting local business. Additionally, I know some of the challenges our producers or manufacturers or people into it would have is accessing, raw material, etc., as well as even some of the services that will be readily available in Trinidad. The coming of what we call the digital society and making government services readily available online, it makes it easier for Tobagonians to do business. And 3, we have to try to encourage our lending institutions to support all local entrepreneurs and also through the THA and through the state create opportunities for funding. I know in our manifesto, one of the things that we are looking at, particularly for new startups, especially around issues like areas of ICT, etc., for this digital economy creating, is making available soft loans, supported by the state. But beyond that, we have to see how we could really encourage our people here, first and foremost, to support local. I remember once I was told that the reason why the Jewish communities thrive is because they invest in themselves. They buy from each other. They support each other, and that's what we need to do as Tobagonians. Let us choose Tobago first, choose our Tobago products first, choose our Tobago services first, and give that encouragement and support, and that way our sector, private sector, will be able to grow and bloom.
I want to piggyback a little bit on that point. One of the concerns that a lot of Tobago entrepreneurs face, and the social media question asks that, sometimes when you go to these funding facilities or grant facilities, the requirement is so tedious. And entrepreneurship is something very new to a lot of young persons. So how do you think the process could be a bit smoother or better developed to ensure that the entrepreneurs really access the funding and they are really growing? Because it have the ones who really get through quickly, and the unfortunate person who don't have that support or don't have the proper knowledge or don't have the person to co-fund or support the grant or the funding that they want to access, they get denied.
And sometimes it's about, harnessing the resources around you. So some people would say, well, I tried to get the funding, I didn't because, but did you go as far as getting the support from maybe Netco, because they have a lot of incubator initiatives where they provide training, so that areas they may be weakened, they will be able to guide you. The BDU, the Division of Finance, they do the same thing, where they will provide guidance and support. But it is imperative that the persons who are responsible for administering the grants, the incentives, that they look at each individual as an individual case. We tend to be too rigid. Sometimes the policy is there to help, but the people are the problem. The people who don't want to understand it's black and white. If you don't have this, but how could I use what you have? It's us helping each other, and that is to me, that is the key thing. The policy is there, but the persons who have to roll out the policy, looking at each individual case and each individual as a unique circumstance, and working with them, working with I'm not saying to be corrupt, but working within the parameters to help them to achieve the goal. That is important.
Okay, we're going to social media. This one is from Ryan Alad. Some proposals have been made for having boundaries that split the water and therefore the resources between Trinidad and Tobago evenly, as opposed to the 6 miles now allowed. What are your views on this? How would you take action or not on this issue?
Okay, in terms of our maritime boundaries and that sort of thing, I strongly believe that for us to really advance, that it is important that we respect, each other's boundaries and each other's space and what we have to offer. If I have to advocate for our boundaries to be expanded so that we really get the benefit from what our waters have to offer, it would mean going and having a discussion, not only around the cabinet table, but getting to the stage where there's a discussion in the assembly and in Tobago, so that we present a united voice in terms of what we want. I could have a personal point of view on it, but at the end of the day, as an elected representative, you have to reflect the voice of the majority, what it is that Tobagonians would want. So for me, getting the consultation, seeing what it is that Tobagonians genuinely want, what it would benefit us as a nation, would separating our borders affect us in terms of international negotiations. So weighing the pros and the cons and then using an informed position to argue and present a case.
All right, so we have another question coming in from our social media. How are you as sitting MP, Mrs. Webster Roy, fostering the entrepreneurial spirit and independence from the THA?
Okay, so as I told you...
So it speaks to the CA moving away from that dependence on government.
Most times when people come to me and ask me for a job, the first question I ask is what skills you have. How can we use your skills to create some kind of business opportunity? So that's number one, helping people to not think just about the traditional get a THA government, but how would they think outside the box and what else is available. In terms of encouraging the entrepreneurial spirit, when people come to me as well, I encourage them to look at what is available nationally to help them with the business. So I would often refer people to BDU. I refer people to Netco. I will make calls. I will call people on boards that I know to say, well, okay, this person came to me with an idea. How would we be able to help them? They may not have all the necessary requirements. What can we do to help the person, reach the criteria? So for me, it's about pointing people in the direction where they will be able to access the help and access the resources, 1, and 2, helping them when they get to that stage to actually access this, if it is funding, if it is technical support, access it, and helping people to not think about just being the employee, but thinking about becoming the employer. We have people who have skills that they could transform into meaningful business opportunities, but they're just risk averse.
How does that work in the Tobago space though? Do you think we have an economy that could support many entrepreneurs?
It can, because you see, if we start producing and supporting our local people, and then we look at exporting, I'm hearing people talking about a CARICOM jet to bring things in. Let us use that to take things out. So when we support entrepreneurs and they grow and they have excess, then they could look at exporting. And trust me, there are certain things that we produce in Tobago that people yearn for. Persons, Tobagonians who would have left and are living outside, they would be willing to pay to get it sent to them. Trinidadians love certain things that we produce. They would gladly pay for it. For example, I purchased non-traditional flowers from a young lady in Goodwood. So I got my breadfruit flower, my cassava flower, dasheen flower, and I did a post one time with the flower, and I made a bake, and I posted on my page, and people from all over asked me, how could we get this in Trinidad? When will it be available in stores in Trinidad? Persons are way to be goodness are we asking, is she exporting? Would we be able to get it in New York? So just things like that we could work with.
To be able to create that opportunity.
Yeah.
All right, so we go again to social media. We have persons coming in with the questions. Do you have a solid plan for the improvement of the food security on the island? So it flows straight into what you were just wrapping on. So a solid plan for the improvement of food security.
The plan has already started. When we would have invested that $23 million in the development of access roads, it was towards that end, creating opportunities to open up access to the arable land is in Tobago, so our farmers could go in and start planting again, so that our young people who are interested in agriculture would be able to access the land. So the plan started. What we have to do now is to ensure that we provide the incentives for those who want to do it and they don't have the means to. So some people would say to me, I want to plant, I want to rear animals, but I don't have the land. How can we work with the Tobago House of Assembly to ensure that state lands for agricultural purposes are distributed in a timely manner to persons who definitely would use it for the purpose? How then do we use the incentives made available through the different ministries and the divisions and ensure it gets to those persons who genuinely need it and would use it to actually boost their production? And I will go back again to some of the young people I would have interacted with over the years. The young man in Mount St. George who was rearing chickens and producing eggs and wanted just the funding to help to expand. The young people in Louis D'Or who looking at establishing what they call a packing house. How do we ensure that they get the funding that they require and the support that they require to make it a reality? It also calls for our technocrats or in the division of agriculture to be more focused and to give the support. Sometimes people ask me, when last did you see your extension officer?
So true.
A politician don't have to tell it to go out and check the farms. That's your work. And people may not like me being honest, but that is some of the cries you hear. The farmer say to me, well, at my home extension, I'm like, yeah. If you're a registered farmer, there should be an extension officer assigned to your district who would be working alongside you, helping you identify diseases, helping you to identify opportunities for funding, etc. So it's about all of us as Tobagonians really doing our part to help to ensure our food security.
All right. So we go once again our social media. We have a number of questions coming in, so we want to get in as many as possible. Accountability and auditing are major issues in Tobago. How do you intend to advocate for change in this regard?
So I had the pleasure of serving on the Public Accounts Committee and the Public Administration Appropriations Committee. So one would have looked at the reports of the Auditor General, and one would have looked, the Public Administration, PAC looks at real-time rollout of, government policy and initiatives. What I must say is that in order for us to ensure greater accountability and transparency is for us to always demand that our public officers follow the rule of law, that our public officers do what they are supposed to do in the time they are supposed to do it. So one of the things that would always come up in, you have a certain deadline where you have to submit your reports, but the deadline will pass, and nobody's calling the accounting officer to say, well, okay, why didn't you submit it? Or the Auditor General would point out that there's a particular weakness in your area. What steps are you taking to remedy that? So, for example, at Office of the Prime Minister, Central Administrative Services, Tobago, one of the weaknesses identified was our registry system, and we would have taken measures to improve on that by introducing the RFID tagging, so we know where our files are and we know what is happening, so we have greater accountability. Using the technology, using whatever recommendations are laid to improve processes so that you have more accountability and transparency. The Auditor General reports provide guidelines for you. And it's just a matter of us now ensuring that our officers, all of us who are responsible to execute the work, that we follow the recommendations and we follow the guidelines and we follow the rules of the public service.
So you think, just going on from that, what role do you think politicians can play in that process? Where you probably have a scenario, because sometimes you try to separate that, the role of the politician versus the role of what may be an administrator or public, like a PS also.
So it's twofold. So I'll go the politician in terms of a politician in a ministerial capacity. It's a policy, ensuring that you have policy established that would force people to do the right thing. But me as a member, as I said, as a member of Parliament, in that capacity, we provide oversight. So we ask the hard questions at committees. So, for example, one of the things that I would have championed during the my last tenure was pensions, gratuities, because that is a bugbear. And coming out of that, me championing that at the Public Accounts Committee and the PAAC, we would have seen where a decision was taken by the Ministry of Finance that when people retire, when they reach that age, they get an immediate payment. That wasn't so, but using all the avenues available to you as a politician in the Parliament, your role on the committees, asking the tough questions and demanding the responses, and as a policy maker, ensuring that the policy is in place and ensuring that even though the policy is in place, you hold your technocrats to account. Are you implementing the policy as you should?
All right, excellent. So we go to social media again. And this question, my question is a bit long. Well, she's giving a warning up front. Some people have been saying that all the developments in Tobago East are being focused in Roxborough. Can Mrs. Webster Roy tell us about the plans for Tobago East outside of Roxborough? Are there any plans for community centers, health centers, or even magistrate courts? So I know we spoke to that before, but this person seems to be looking in terms of infrastructure, whether there are any additional plans outside of the Roxborough space with regards to infrastructure.
Okay, so I know in Charlottesville, the Tobago House of Assembly would have committed to doing the work to ensure that we fix that Turpin Bend, which would have been a challenge not only for the commuting public, but for persons who live in the community as well. There's also the intention to finish the mall that would have started and also to construct the community center in Charlottesville. In places like, for example, Lands for me, as I would have mentioned before, there's a desire by a group of young men there to establish a trail to create a tourism product. And that will be developed. I'm hoping to work alongside the community and work alongside the Tobago House of Assembly, the Division of Tourism, to have that trail developed. I know in some of our communities that there's a need for improved access to water and electricity. There's a commitment by the Water and Sewage Authority to continue to expand the infrastructure in Tobago East, all constituents have easy access to water. They would have started a pipeline project in Lamy last week, and the same day they would have also started we have toured the facility to see the work being done to start the desilting of the Hillsborough Dam. In terms of schools, etc., nursery schools, I know through the collaboration between the central government, Tobago House of Assembly, and the IDB, 5 new nursery schools will be established, 2 in Tobago East, 1 in Bell Garden, 1 in Roxborough. I know that in the future, I'm hoping that we would have back in Tobago East a magistrates court established, because we had 1 in Roxborough, and I believe the 1 in Shalafell isn't functioning, but to have a magistrates court back in Tobago East. And if I say Roxborough, people might vex with me, so I'm just saying Tobago East. Wherever the best location is identified, we work with that.
I have a follow-up concerning electricity. We've been having a lot of power outages in Tobago, and especially in the Tobago East. Have you been in touch with the relevant utilities towards that process, and as the MP, how can you speak to that?
So let me give you a little joke. Whenever we had TNTech come before us in Parliament before PAC or PAC, they used to cringe because I always complain about issues in Tobago East in terms of low voltage or high voltage, people appliances being damaged. So that is one of the things I would have always been championing for us to have, ensure that our electricity supply is improved. And we would have seen in Stolly Park where they would have set up a class substation, and that is supposed to help. I am trying to understand why it is that even though we would have done the work at Cove, we would have established this substation in Stolly Park, why are we having these challenges? And when I remember talking to someone at TNTech, and they were saying to me, well, sometimes the problem will come from overhanging branches or snakes on the lines, etc. And I asked the question, well, what could we do to improve that? How could we change maybe how we do the lines or whatever to reduce, having outages because a snake wrap around a line or a tree branch because a highway knocked down something. Yeah.
Right. So we have a caller. Good evening, caller.
Good evening to the panel. Earlier, I heard you spoke about asking hard questions, so I'm just calling in to ask a hard question.
Go ahead, caller. You have 1 minute and about 30 seconds has gone. Go ahead, caller.
Okay, right. So I know on the Tobago level there are 2 different types of politics. There's national politics and there's Tobago-centric politics in terms of the party objectives, right? At the national level, many persons to align themselves with the 2 major parties, and oftentimes Tobago's objectives and intentions are lost in Parliament. So my question to the representative is, why did you choose a national party? What do you think is the objective or the advantage as opposed to a Tobago-centric party?
So I think from what I'm getting, the caller is trying to get a sense of why you would have chosen a national party as opposed to a Tobago-only party.
Okay, because at the end of the day, I reside in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and the national development is not only about one island, it's about the 2 islands. That's number 1. Number 2, the People's National Movement represents the institution that would have created the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. We would have moved us from colonialism to independence to the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. We are a stable institution that is truly national at heart. Every election, we send up candidates in both Tobago and Trinidad. And to me, the People's National Movement best represents what I want to see in terms of a party that champions national development, a movement for all, a movement that is truly national in scope, and an institution that would have been tried and tested over the years. And every time we would have been tested, we would have come back better, be it through adjusting our constitution. It was a decision, a national decision, and then looking at our constitution, we have established the Tobago Council to give the Tobago people a greater voice within the party, between the movement called the People's National Movement. So for me, at the end of the day, examining all that is presented to me and all that could come to me in terms of what would offer the best options for national development and respecting both islands, the PNM for me is always number 1.
Okay, we have one more from social media. Time do fly fast when you're having fun, right? And when you're talking to a politician. One more. Yes, last one on social media. The best piece of real estate in the heart of Scarborough remains locked and bad after 7 years. We're talking about where the NIB Mall was. Why is the NIB allowed to get away with this? That I saw in the center of Scarborough.
You know, I would like to see that part of Scarborough really developed again. And I would like for the NIB to really get the work done. But I'm wondering if maybe the issue might be funding. If the NIB is maybe cash-strapped. I heard the opposition leader talking about using excess reserves of the NIB to do infrastructure projects. And I got worried because I've been hearing and seeing reports where they're saying that if we're not careful in terms of managing the portfolio and the funding, that we may not be able to fund. Yes, so I'm wondering if it is that, and I'm wondering if maybe they should consider maybe engaging other private entities to buy into the project and help it to move from just on paper and actually completed.
All right. So believe it or not, viewers, yes, we're just at about that hour going in. But just before we close, Ayana, we want to give you that opportunity to address the people of Tobago, speak to your constituents in terms of why should they vote for Ayana Webster Roy come August 10th.
Which camera am I looking at? That one? Tobago East, it has been a pleasure serving you, working with you, collaborating with you to transform our constituency. As we look to the future, I want to reaffirm my commitment to be a representative for all, accessible, engaging, loving, compassionate, conscientious. Once we work together, I could only see Tobago East becoming even more beautiful, and I could see our island, our nation progressing stably under the People's National Movement. So remember, on August 10th, make the right choice and vote for Ayana Webster Roy.
Wonderful.
So viewers, you have heard it there. We've just been chatting, conversation with the candidates, and this evening we wrap up with Ayana Webster Roy, the PNM candidate for Tobago East. You would have had the opportunity. Today was day 1 of 3 days, and we would have started with Tashia Boris, PDP candidate for Tobago West. We continued with Ricardo Philip, the independent candidate for Tobago West. And then we just closed this evening's segment with Ayana Webster Roy, PNM candidate for Tobago East. Tomorrow and Tuesday, we continue with the rest of candidates that are putting forward themselves for Tobago East and Tobago West. Tomorrow, Monday, we start at 7:30, so we invite you to tune in. We want to thank all our viewers, those who tuned in on Pulse 89.5, those who joined us via Zoom, those who also joined us via the Facebook Live. We've seen the many comments, and I want to encourage all 3 candidates. You can definitely look at the words of encouragement that have come from our Tobago populace. I think, Toya, we are just at about, we're probably well over 200 or so now.
Yes.
Counting in terms of the flow of comments. And we really look forward to having you continuing this public discussion with us at our virtual town hall meeting that takes place, that continues tomorrow on Monday and also on Tuesday.
And this project is really chartered by the Tobago Channel 5 as the media partner in collaboration with the civil society organizations on the island. So we must say well done to the Tobago Writers Guild, Youth Voice TT, also the Tobago Entrepreneurs, and all the 7 civil society partners who supported this project, endorsed by the Tobago Youth Council, endorsed by Environment Tobago, endorsed by the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association, endorsed by the Castar Tourism Development Association. The list is so long, but we have been doing it, and we continue to hear more from civil society as we continue these next 2 days with engagement with candidates that are going up for the elections.
Well, correction, I said 2 something. It's now 900 and something, approaching 1,000 comments flowing.
Well done,
we
well
really
done.
want to thank our viewers for tuning in. And I particularly wanted to pay attention to one comment that was made, and one of the persons who are viewing online would have indicated that this is really an excellent platform for them to get the information. And we're very happy to be a part of that process, because everybody will receive the information in different forms. And that's why we felt it important to bring our candidates into this setting as well to share the information with you as the persons going forward to the polls and making that decision come August 10th for our general elections 2020. Let's remind you again from Tobago Channel 5 and all our partners, please keep safe, do what's required in these times in keeping with the relevant measures so as to ensure that in the Tobago space that COVID-19 doesn't become a major issue for us at all. And let's remember, most importantly, while we have the government and all other entities doing what's required, we have our personal responsibility to ensure our safety, even as we campaign, even as we go out and we engage persons. Let's make sure we keep that in focus. We look forward to you joining us tomorrow evening at 7:30 as we continue our conversations with the candidates. Hosting here this evening, moderators Latoya Roberts, Thomas, and Julian Skeet. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.